Oh, I didn't see
Andrew
it yet.
Gary.
I haven't read it yet.
It's down on the bill, you'll know.
All right, you are good to go.
You have it on Curry, Tara.
Really?
Okay.
Hey, Chief.
Hi, Mr. Chairman.
What's up?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Live.
All right, Dan, whenever you're ready.
Should be good. My computer's just being stubborn.
We're good?
You are recording, so even if the YouTube is being stubborn, I can get you that way.
All right. I'd like to bring to order our Brookfield Board of Finance special meeting for Monday, March 14th. We'll start by the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any public comment? Hearing none. All right, we're going to new business. We'll start off with budget discussions, general budget discussions. Since we have everybody here, Tara, if you don't mind, we're going to do the capital project radio since all the stakeholders are here.
Sure, whatever you want to do.
Thank you. All right, you all want to come up to the table here, please?
There's a chair.
I'll just over here.
Chair?
Good, over there.
Everybody sitting?
Yeah, you could sit at the head of the table.
Or the foot, one or the other, right?
Late guys sleeping in.
All right, we'll just start from the start for the point. We're talking about a consultant for, it was 39,000. And I think it was discussed, and I think you had a meeting. You want to take over where you were with your meeting or
Yeah,
not?
so we just closed that meeting down at 6 o'clock tonight, and the Board of Selectmen agreed to add it as a ARPA-funded item. And for your next special meeting, if we can get that funding, if you all are on board, once we make that determination, if we can move it along and get it committed, I think the sooner, we had the conversation that the sooner we, well, we had the conversation if we were gonna go out to bid on the item or not. And I actually said that I would be willing to waive that, and I think it's important because I was under the impression that you all already have a relationship with Paul and you've been working with him extensively for quite some time. And
I think either way we go with the program, whether it's state or local, Paul has a vast knowledge of both of them, and I think for Brookfield it's the best move. I think we have to do it, and instead of rushing something and putting a figure up that's not appropriate, I think it's the way to go.
So you approved
so
it
the Board
then?
of Selectmen approved it tonight.
So then we need to add that to our agenda Wednesday. Because that's 2 days in advance.
Okay,
So
yeah.
if we'd have time, can you handle that, Eileen, please? So put that on for Wednesday nights. Because we're definitely meeting Wednesday night.
Yep.
Thursday's a byproduct if we don't get it done Wednesday. So we will add it to the agenda then and discuss it then. So now we go 39,000. So now what are the next steps that came out of your meeting tonight?
Oh, we were not.
Oh, I don't care who answers, right? So
Oh,
we all, I just want us all to be on the same page.
We had a meeting on Friday.
Oh, Friday,
Exactly.
okay.
We all met Friday.
Okay, yeah.
And basically, we'll get, once it gets approved, we'll get Paul on board and get him moving, and then we'll get really tight numbers, have him do the plan to basically decide whether we're gonna go with the state or with, he's gonna be the one to tell us this is the right thing for Brookfield, and we'll have Motorola then tighten up the numbers and get with the ROM, right?
Yeah, he's gonna do a qualified
ROM, and that way, and that's the only way to really do it, because right now we're,
Okay.
in a quandary, and none of us are educated enough to make that decision or run this project. It's just not. We're all really good at what we do, not radios. It's not our thing.
Now, go ahead.
Back
Take
to the
up-
Board of Selectmen meeting.
Yes.
We also discussed the way ahead with these appropriations. So
Yep.
once it comes to you guys and if you decide to carry it forward, then it has to go to the town meeting, which I'd like to tuck it into the town meeting that we have scheduled for the 29th, if it gets that far. So those would be the next steps for allocating the money for the consultant.
Then Marcia, you had concerns about whether we were putting it in.
Go ahead.
But, I'm sorry. No, Dana, yes?
March 29th, is that a town meeting or is that just a public hearing?
That's public hearing.
That's not
It's
town.
both. We combined that,
Yeah.
remember?
No.
Oh, we did,
We talked
But
about
once
it.
for capital,
so you can do a town meeting and just add
There would be two
add it to
separate
the agenda
meetings,
of the
yeah.
town meeting, because the
Yes.
capital meeting is that
So
meeting
we're
too.
keeping those meetings separate, but they'll be on the same night,
Right,
so we're not asking the public to come out twice. I do have to caveat that by saying that I need clarification from the attorney to make sure that that is the proper procedure, but from what we can take away from Charlie 8-5 Echo, it sounds like that is the process.
makes sense.
Sort of does. So let's go back to capital then. You had a concern about capital this year? Like, we were gonna remove it. We talked about not putting the capital in
Oh,
this year
I
for
just
the
want to make
radios.
sure that,
Right.
that everyone's aware that it takes about 3 months to pull a bond issue together between all the different pieces and the official statement and things that, so we just make sure we have that in our pocket, that if we weren't gonna know the amount until October, then we'd have to pull things together. I just worry about the cash flow, that I don't know what we would have to come up, let's say we get a good deal, if we buy it in December, we no longer will have the school money as part of our cash flow. That was my big concern is, could we schedule it out of when it would be so that we can allow enough time for a bond offering?
So when you presented us the Board of Selectmen budget, you said we could time this out to a different time to bond this money. But did we ever figure out that had a cost, or are we just better off putting it in this capital plan up to $6 million?
So those were all the conversations that came out from the capital committee, and were we going to put it in there as part of this, or was it gonna be a separate line item? How were we gonna do that? And that's where we hadn't had any resolution, we need your help. So if we took it out altogether, then we'd have to bring it to another vote down the
Right.
road.
Dan, you have any thoughts, Ryan, on this side?
And I think as we wait, rates may continue to climb, so.
My initial was pull it out, and I'll say that, but then when I thought about it more, I don't think it makes sense. I think we just go with it and we put up to $6 million.
You can finalize the size of a bond offering after you begin the process.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not like we need to know the amount of the dollar amount 3 months ahead of issuing the bond.
Right.
So,
Yeah, correct,
Right.
that we do that, we finalize it probably a month in advance.
Yeah. so what's the timing of your project?
It depends on Motorola, it could be up to 6
Up
months.
to 6 months. Yeah.
So there is time, for sure. It's not, if we get him going April 1st, it might be October where we have answers.
Right.
He does have juice, and that's
Yep.
the reason we like him, because he calls these people and they pick up the phone. They don't, it doesn't go to voicemail. He's connected. So he can hopefully expedite some things, but I'm not, he was 3 to 6 months was his window. When he talked to us on Thursday with the state, we had a conversation with him.
Thoughts? Yes? No?
So if we keep it open-ended in this bond offering, not in this bond offering, in the capital
Approved
plan.
capital,
The
yes.
approved capital plan. The downside is what? The downside is the potential of overspending.
Yeah, that's.
The downside is somebody not knowing what's going on, seeing a $6 million huge capital number. I'm just trying to think of all the negative
Yeah.
possibilities
Yeah.
of doing that.
We had talked about moving it out on the, so have a separate line item just talking about the
Mhm.
radios, so the town knows what the 6 million is.
But then I worry about people voting down either the non-police radio thing, because, our safety stuff is often supported by the town, but what if they say we're paying $6 million for radios, we're not gonna chuck in the $2 million for the other projects that we need?
One of the things that we did discuss as a group was, as soon as this thing's a go, then we can start to really advertise it, and they have their outlets to be able to, advertise to the community, so to speak, so that.
If it were to be
everyone gets on
standalone,
board.
yeah, if it were to be a standalone project, like later on, a few months from now, because this also involves the school. We now have immediate communications with the schools. It's a really big enhancement for security and safety within the schools, where right now we kind of can talk to them, but not really. And that's going to change and make things a lot better. So everybody in town, between
Yeah.
the Board of Ed and public safety people, and with the right,
Right now, we're totally reliant on the phones for the schools. And
Yeah.
we can't even, just to give an example, we can't talk to our officer
It is.
in the school on radio.
That's ridiculous.
So if it were to be standalone, I'm quite confident that we could, it would overwhelmingly go through
I
because of all the stakeholders involved.
I agree with
You know.
that. So, it'll either, since it's gonna be a long time before we know the number anyway, and we're not gonna bond it until we know the number, it's either gonna make that timeline or it's not. I don't think the timing of the bond issuance should drive the decision.
That's fine, I just
That
don't,
should- yeah.
I just want everyone to know that we may have the cash flow to do it before we get the bonds finalized, we may not, we just need to schedule some of that out.
Right. I mean, I think there's probably even more risk that we don't have the number before we issue the bond, and we have to do its own thing, because if you're saying, what, you're gonna go out in November?
We're gonna try to wait until later, let's say no effective interest rates, wait until later, because we're hoping that the municipal building committee can say, oh, we know for sure we have $2 million that we're under budget, and then we could apply that bonds, 80% or whatever our portion was, we could apply that bonding to this project, so that if we have a $6 million project, maybe we only bond $4 million.
Makes sense. Yeah, let's see what happens.
And he thought that they might know.
You say pull it out?
and-
See, I'm on the reverse of that.
Really?
I really am on the reverse of that. Mary, before I speak, let's hear you, because I'm on the reverse of this.
Yeah, I'm kind of still thinking about it all.
My thing is, when we come out of this thing Wednesday night, we're gonna have a budget that everybody can get behind. I think the Board of Selectmen, we're gonna tweak it a little, but we're not gonna be very far. I think you'd be happy, because this is what you thought you wanted it to be coming out, not wanted it to be, but you got it to be at 3.19 out of your meeting. Board of Ed is gonna be happy. We should be happy. So I think if, like you're saying, a standalone, if this budget's good and we get behind it, you should be able to get behind it out the gate. We should be able to pass this budget as one bundle, one time, out the gate. If we
but-
believe in what we're doing, I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with that, but by putting a number in there that we are almost sure is inflated, I'm not endorsing a $6 million number. So that's kind of what, by
Correct.
putting that number out there on paper, saying please vote for up to $6 million, we're basically saying we think that we should spend that we might approve $6 million for this radio. Then I don't know that we're there.
And we don't know what the discounts are, or if there
No.
are other grants that may fall out of the sky.
We need to justify every single number in there. That's where, I mean,
no,
If we knew the number, I'd like to see them combined.
yeah,
Right.
right.
I don't want it pulled out.
But even though, I'm sorry to ask this, I know
No.
I've asked you before, Marcia, but even if we were to bond like 6 million, it's not to say we have to use that, right? So
we could approve 6 million of bonding, so it'd be authorized but unissued. We had talked a few months back that I used to have one client that did everything in a two-step process, that they would approve things, and then the second approval would be for the exact purchase order before it could be spent, and kind of maintain control
right,
that way.
so you understand that, right? So it'd go back through to you again. So they would come, we'd approve 6 million in this capital, they come back to you at 4.7. It would go back through the Board of Selectmen at 4.7, the real bill, and then we would approve the 4.7 on the backside, which would leave us 1.3 that you roll into future capital projects. Because the way we've tied this budget is, we got a problem next year too,
Yep.
right? We know we got problems in the debt. But I understand exactly what
Yeah.
you're saying. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
figure out a way that if we're gonna, it's a good budget, we're gonna put forth, I think we'd get support in it. If we put in a double, I don't know what else. I mean, if we do it on its own, what's a referendum cost? I think, where's Ryan? Is Ryan here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
That's true, there's a referendum.
You want 'em?
Can't be-
it's like
Yeah.
13,000.
I think
That's a
it
good
says
point.
10,000.
It's $10,000 for
That's
a
a good point. It's
referendum.
not just.
So-
Either way that you have it, we will garner the support and get it up and really, and whatever we have to do. So whatever you need, we will be out there pushing the same thing, whether it's in the budget together, which would be a win too. Either way, you tell us and we'll make it happen. Because we've projects before that we've had to push, through publicly, we've done it, and it's not been a problem.
$10,000.
So if we were to do a special capital referendum for the radios,
$10,000.
Yeah, so that's a lot of money to spend. I think we can contain it, Dan. I mean, the 6 million is what I saw when I did my research. It came down to 4 for Westport because they used the state and they got $2 million in different grants. Motorola was reaching out to me today. They're looking for grants. The 2 teams are out there looking right now to find us grants from Motorola side, from their sales department. So,
And as soon as we decide which way we're going to go, the fire departments will jointly file for grants that we can with FEMA. It's nothing guaranteed, but we do have that at our disposal to try. For at least one cycle or maybe 2, depending on how long it takes us to get the radios going. We have our grant people get them together and we'll do it jointly. We've done that before, and we'll see.
Is there a chance that 6 is too low, and we're not gonna be going for enough?
I don't think so.
No?
No, I'm quite comfortable with 6. Yeah, right, Peter?
Yeah, his
if
was
that's the
5,
case,
4
we
to
get his
5, 9.
commission back because he reiterated
Yeah,
5
yeah,
times. He's never missed on the low.
Yeah. He has his hand on the. He's a big radio nerd. He's got his hand on the pulse of. I mean, he knows what's going on, and I think he was quite confident that it was going to be less than that, but he didn't want to commit to that because of Motorola.
My thing is, we're gonna do this, I would assume.
Yeah.
I mean, we need this, I mean, you all come to us, you're the experts, we need this, right? So the worst case, and I think, like I say, the momentum of this budget is gonna be, I think everybody's gonna be okay with this. And, everybody doesn't wanna pay more in taxes, we understand that, but I think everybody's gonna be able to get behind this. I think with the fire department helping us and everybody in the police department helping us, I think we have a good chance of getting it through. And the worst case scenario is, like Marcia was saying, we put the double approvals in place. And we
Yep.
cut,
The old "help us help you" thing really works. It does.
Right.
We found that works a lot.
and I think all of us were a little nervous that we didn't cover enough capital this year because of the big radios. So then worst come to worst, you could carry it over next year, right, Marcia? If we didn't use this money?
Yes.
We could carry it
well,
into the-
hopefully we don't bond it if we don't.
Right, well, if we don't, yeah, but,
And
so then we
John
wouldn't need
Lucas, John Lucas thinks he's driving, otherwise he'd call in. It
So he's texting instead?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's in a parking lot.
what's his license plate?
I'm sure he's doing it because he's got that fancy
Voice
car
to text.
that should be part of this capital budget to save 10,000 plus get these guys on the ground running, applying for grants, etc. I rely on their educated guesses of what it'll cost and make sure that the language is up to. That's his 2 cents.
We're gonna do on capital anyway later, but now we got the whole story. I think the bottom line is, in the Board of Selectmen, I'm sure behind too, we gotta do this anyway. It's a matter of
Yeah.
how we do it. We're gonna go with the the consultant, that's gonna go through ARPA, ball's gonna get rolling, and I think you have our commitment to, we're gonna do this.
Great.
And we will keep everyone in the loop with as Paul gives us updates, we'll give you guys updates. We'll know where we are, where we're going, what's going on, and then we will
Right.
know. And
You
then
just
we-
gotta run it through the selectmen
Yep.
and Marcia, they'll come to us
Yep,
through
so you guys know.
the right time frame.
Absolutely.
So I think we're good.
All right.
So good.
Yeah, I think on that, are you satisfied from your side?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You know what? It's been great cooperation with everybody. It's been a good project, so.
Okay. Gary, you
Appreciate that.
comfortable too?
Good.
Yeah, this is definitely what we need to do to figure out which way we're going.
Chief, you're good?
I'm good.
All right. All right, you said we'll
Yeah,
take the
too.
fire department first, I mean, police department
Police department
first.
first, yeah, there you go, they can go. We're good. Doc and I've outside. Then you can have Gary. I'll finish it up last. How's that?
All right. Well, welcome and thank you.
Can we start here?
Yep.
Nate, you're on.
Well, bear with us because it's my first time doing this. I want to say solo, but we've been here before, we just haven't been in charge of it. And fortunately, Jay, being as meticulous as he was in doing this, was able to present us with everything. It's just me trying to explain some of his numbers. So we did the PowerPoint based on the recommendations, or the requests, and as you can see, the accomplishments since last year, mentioned that we were able to do the townwide test kit distribution, and Pete did most of the coordination for that, with help from the fire department, a lot of help from the fire department. We did complete the first phase of the mandatory drug testing for the officers, which was part of the Police Accountability Act. We have 19 officers that we need to do for recertification, to do that drug testing this year. And we also started the mental health wellness checks, which were unfunded mandates by the legislature.
That's fine.
We completed the testing for the training for our mandatory body-worn cameras, and we successfully implemented the program. But now that's a yearly cost that we didn't have in the past. We upgraded our telephones and radio recording equipment that we have in dispatch. That was end of life and was having some issues. We were able to, even though we had a vehicle cut out of the budget, we were able to successfully use what we had in our vehicle replacement and rotation program, including the nationwide storage, because of our relationship with the dealer and our upfitter. We got tipped off to some cars coming in, and we were able to take advantage of that. And the special news we just talked about, everybody knows that Jay retired on the 31st, that I had taken over, and Pete had been promoted to major, and we are currently in the process of interviewing for the captains, which Matt here is applying for also. We had a discussion about the need to replace or add an SRO or SSO, a school security officer, to cover the new school, which is scheduled to come online in January of 2023. So some of the stuff we use for performance indicators are community service, which is all our response times and community activity meetings and activities that we present. The crime rate, the percentage of crimes to the population, resolution rate, number of crimes that are solved, safety in public, that would include like DUI, vehicle-related incidents, burglaries, missing children, that kind of stuff. Resources, we talked about staffing, firearms training, etc. So I didn't attach a graph because there was too much data that we captured every single day. And we run these reports daily for daily activity, then monthly for the police commission. All these numbers are run, and then yearly the national NIBRS collects our data and then gives us stuff back in a year or two. It's usually like a year behind, I think.
Yeah, it's monthly. It's monthly. We report monthly
Right.
to NIBRS, and then they aggregate and try to communicate, get everybody on the level playing field.
Right, so we capture that data and look at it regularly. And like I said, we provide a report to the police commission every month on our activity and where we're at. Major hardships, if any, to be addressed. I mentioned the unfunded state mandates for the Police Public Act, the in-car video, which we're asking for updates to our current system, plus the additional media requirements for the storage, which is crazy numbers. Training for de-escalation, use of force, drug screening, and mental health. All these are unfunded mandates that we have to keep up. We put in for the Axon Taser replacement program. Our current tasers are at the end of a 5-year cycle, which is a recommended manufacturer replacement program. Contractual salary increases, the additional town holidays and overtime due to some contractual issues with sick time. And I already mentioned the switch from one-time purchase cost to subscription-based cost seems to be the norm for almost everything we're doing now. The effects that it's had on our budget, there's been these were approximate based on the proposals. So it was like 12% increase in training, 71% increase in equipment maintenance, and that was big part because of the in-car cameras and the network security uplift that Matt can talk about, the disaster recovery site, and the increases in salaries. Some of the goals for next year, to try and meet the requirements under the Police Accountability Act, which I don't know how much you're all up on that, but one of the things is accreditation. And we have until 2025 right now, the way the law is written for accreditation. And it's going to be a tough accomplishment because the chiefs are trying to get that changed to meet a post standard rather than CALIA. And there's stuff, we're going to have to spend a lot of money on the building to make accreditation. To some of the stuff that they have in there is quite expensive. Plus, we're going to have somebody full-time just to deal with accreditation. And that leads me to staffing needs. We're filling vacancies caused by the retirements. Pete can speak to that because we're having a hard time getting qualified people to even apply. It's just a sign of the times, I think. You guys already discussed the radio, and we're exploring those grant opportunities that we could. The effects of these hardships that had on the budget, the cost of training and special assignments, SRO and accreditation I mentioned, overtime expenses caused by vacancies in union contracts dealing with sick time. And you guys have already talked about capital, so there was $3.75 million police upgrade that was in lieu of the building project to replace or renovate. This was going to add a couple of things that we felt were the most necessary, to include renovation of the dispatch center, the $6 million radio upgrade, and the security lift, which Matt can speak more about, which was $36,000. I already mentioned the police facility upgrade versus replacement, additional staff to address future growth in town. The FBI recommendation is 1 officer for every 500 people in your town. So as the town continues to grow, we're going to have to take into consideration that it takes us a minimum of 6 months to spin somebody up with training, and with the hard time we're having attracting qualified people right now, I think we're going to have some issues down the road. But we're advertising for laterals and trying to save some time and money. Well, save some time and get somebody in. Doesn't really save us much money because they come in at a higher step. But, some efficiencies, unconventional thinking. And this existing town property was just something I threw in there because I knew when we talked about building a new building that we would have to use existing town property. And we already did an impact study to address, not really to address staffing, I just mentioned the recommendations from the FBI. But all you gotta do is take the town population and figure out what you should have for numbers. It's just doesn't take into consideration when you have all the specialties, or you have, you take an officer out of your line and you put him in the school, and now that still counts as an officer, but that's not an officer that's an officer you would have normally had taking calls. That's about it.
Thank you. So then I think I'll ask some questions, and then I'll roll into things. How's that? Is the SRO in the budget right now?
No. We had a discussion, Jay had discussions with the superintendent of schools prior to retirement, and there was some pros and cons to the SRO program in that school, in the new school. And I think after I had a meeting with Superintendent Burrill, and we talked about it a little with the selectmen and finance, that it's not something that we need immediately in this budget. The superintendent has said that the opening of the school in January was going to be the same number or close to the same number that's currently in Huckleberry Hill.
Yes.
And that it wouldn't be until the following September when the increase in the student population. So if something were to change, if we were to switch from a recommendation that we put an armed security, which could be dual purpose in the school as far as someone at the front door when kids come in, under police authority, like someone like a retired police officer who would answer to us as far as training, and in discussions with the current SROs, our youth officer, the program was never really set up to have that age group with an SRO in the schools. Do I think it can work? Yeah, it could work. But that's about a $90,000 officer to be in a school with with that age group. And it works in some towns, but most towns don't have an SRO in their elementary schools. It's just because we're going to have close to 1,000 kids, according to the superintendent, in that school, that we may want to rethink just having a armed security or 2 security guards in there, 2 security officers, whereas the SRO is not set up to be security in the school. Yeah, he's set up to do. So to answer your question, no, it's not in this budget.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask another question just in regards to that, just from my point of view, is would it behoove us to have someone there day one, and that if the Board of Ed was on board too, this is the school, it's open, and this is this person's, like day one we start, we don't introduce it in after we've already opened the school.
I think after the discussion with the superintendent, that wouldn't be necessary. He doesn't feel like, and I'm not trying to put words in his mouth.
No.
He didn't feel like it was something we needed to address for their January opening. He felt that if we were gonna have further discussions with the Board of Selectmen and Finance as far as getting a person in there, if it be an SRO or an SSO, that something would definitely need to be done for the following end of August or September when that opens.
All right, so you said that for a town, it's 1 to 500 people, 1 officer for 500 people. As we're growing here, are you finding that to be true on top of it? Because with all of our new Four Corners area, are you finding more calls of those areas, and these are the type of areas we're increasing? Does that ratio change now? Or are you still in the...
I think it's hard to say that there's been an increase in the calls for service because of the increase in population because of COVID. So our numbers went down drastically as far as a lot of calls and officer initiated calls, because we were kind of doing like the fire department. We were responding when we were called out. We weren't really being as proactive because guys didn't want to go into houses. We were still going on ambulance calls, but they were waiting to be called in if they were needed. So there's a lot of inconsistent data that's in there. So I would say the calls for those areas have somewhat increased just because of the amount of people living there.
Correct.
But overall, our calls have not. Are they going to? I mean, they were on, target to, till 2 years ago, and then they dropped off. But I could say that we're going to have to start, probably next year, thinking about adding, especially if we decide to go with an SRO or an officer in that new school. That's not something we can afford to take out of our current lineup. We have to add.
You mentioned like specialties, do you have the resources you need in all areas? Or is there an area that we're not?
We have all our, aside from the administration, all of our positions are being filled. Nobody is at a point where, besides Pete and I, where we're pulling our hair out because we're not able to do everything in our job description. But most, I would say, yes, we're able to handle the call load with the current people that we have as long as we're able to fill the empty positions that we get. Because right now, our overtime budget, Marcia can probably speak better to this, is gonna be a problem.
So how many open positions do you have?
2.
You currently have 2 opens.
Mm-hmm.
What levels?
Entry.
Yeah,
Entry.
that's really-
Entry.
Okay, and.
And we know on good authority that we have at least 2 more openings in July. Not official, but that's just what we know what's gonna happen. We have approximately, I believe, 9 people that are eligible to retire.
Now, we don't have anything in the pipeline as in training now or anything like that. So we are looking for laterals, as you said.
We have, well, Pete's been scrambling to get a couple of seats in the academy.
We're on
classes.
waiting lists.
Yeah.
All right.
It's, yeah.
For the year.
Yeah.
No, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
If we
I'm
need
on
to-
Milford, New Britain, and Meriden, and we're on waiting lists. We do have an entry level graduating April, and then he'll have about 3 months of FTO. So by the summer he'll be on the road.
That's not part of our current.
But that's not part of the 2 that were down.
So, in the meantime, what would your overtime, and overtime's understood, is the open positions would cover the overtime for how long? If you got an open position currently in the budget, 2, right, or that means there's 2 salaries right now that are not getting paid out. So that could go towards overtime. What's the balance there? I mean, do you?
If we hired somebody today,
Yes.
we probably would have maybe 1 seat in a month, and then that salary goes away because we got to pay them on their
Right,
account.
right,
But they're
right,
no
yeah.
good to us for 6 months.
Yeah.
So we're looking at least 6 months down the road before we have those positions filled
Right.
with somebody that can go on the road.
We're just trying to help. We're not picking at it.
Yeah,
no, I know. It's-
No, you don't have to worry about the offensive. It's just
Yeah.
trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
That's all. You said the accreditation is going to cost money. Do we have like a requirement list for that we can
Yeah,
start chewing on?
I don't have it with me, but the accreditation standard in order to be CALIA certified, which I believe is how the law is written, is an expensive process. Some departments that are accredited have come right out and said, you know, this does not make us a better department. It doesn't make us because we're accredited. Because one chief from one of the towns came from, you know, a deputy chief in another town, where both of these towns, one was, I believe, West Hartford. He came from West Hartford, which has a very strong police department and is well regarded. And he left and went to Farmington, and he says Farmington's accredited, but that doesn't mean that West Hartford was any better. But it just means that either they couldn't get accredited, and there is no like loophole in the law that says, oh well, if you can't get accredited, you know, because you can't spend $6 million or $20 million for a new building or $6 million for a renovation, that it's okay. It just says you will be accredited.
You don't have a choice. You will be accredited.
Correct, by 2025.
Like the cell area, our cell area just can't be accredited, so then you have to fix it. The doors don't, you can't do it, the sizes, the drains, that infrastructure all has to be fixed to meet those marks.
So like I said, I think that they're trying to change it. They're trying to change it to the post standard, which is a state level of accreditation, which isn't quite as restrictive. But
So
yeah.
we need 2 lists then. One for the old state standard and one for the new standard. Because we need to start attacking the ones that are on both the lists.
that's a full-time job for somebody.
Have you talked to Steve Harding about any of this yet? If he's, might be on the
Yeah.
lawmaking side of it? And
Yeah, he's you know, he understands, as does Craig Miner, that these requirements are crazy.
But if it's a full-time job, we got to address it at some point. We can't wait till 2024 and figure this out. I mean, at some point, we got to, at least get the baselines going and, get at least to the selectmen. Maybe Greg can, he's good at projects, he can put forth a skeleton or something. Not say do the work, but get a skeleton together, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the checklist to
Mhm.
see what we're missing as a starting point. This is the
Sure.
first time I'm actually hearing of this.
So, because we gotta look at, 2025 is not that far away. It really isn't in a matter of our budget process and what we've been trying to promote is this forward-looking 3 years out thing, so we don't get caught up
Sure.
in a bind. And if we need to get accredited, it sounds like there's no way to get around it. So it's the elephant in the room we gotta tackle. So even if we just get the basic of the outlines and have an idea of, are we talking $1 million, $3 million, $5 million? I mean, what's the number you guys are thinking about? You've looked at the list, I mean,
It's
big,
yeah.
I could tell, yeah.
And it's also a salary, because somebody has to be dedicated, because it doesn't just go away, you have to keep up the accreditation. So, rules and regulations that we've been working on, they have to meet that accreditation standard. So we're not done with them yet. And that's something, that's almost a full-time job in itself, just keeping up on policies and procedures. When the state makes a change to an existing procedure, you have to make sure you have all the language in there, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if it's a change in a current policy, then, it's not a big deal. If it's a whole new policy, then the guys have to be trained on it and the building part of it, the infrastructure is probably the biggest cost besides
Is
the
that-
salary.
When's the last time we were accredited, or have we never been accredited? How does this
No.
work?
There was never a requirement to be, nor do I know what the real benefit is to having that, other than you can check off the box and you can say, we meet these standards.
So is there any state money coming down the pike for these departments who aren't
Mandates.
able to meet accreditation, or
No.
how are they?
There's also no penalty, right? It's like, how is this a requirement if there's no,
I mean,
So,
Is
no
the,
penalty, then
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
well, we're breaking the law.
I mean, I'm gonna be more concerned with 456 units where 2 people live in each, and we're not gonna have enough police officers per capita. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that we need to get after now.
And it takes a year to spin up an officer.
Right.
yeah, I agree. The accreditation person, is that an administrative civilian person or is that an officer person?
I don't know what it
Okay.
has to be.
Sure.
I would think that most of the departments have an officer that does it, only because of sensitivity with the documents that are, they're, I don't know if it has to be an officer though.
And is there, so it doesn't sound like there's a penalty, say we just ignore the accreditation, obviously,
Yeah.
comply. Second question is, so the police facility, partial option has, so for 3.75, has that, have you considered that being, or I guess, is that project considering getting us up to speed with that, or is that kind of just bringing up, I know for our facilities are old, is that just bringing up our facilities and not?
That was not to meet accreditation standard, that was to add some training rooms, meeting room, public meeting rooms, increases in the dispatch center.
The
to
lockers
accommodate-
downstairs.
Yeah.
The lockers were in there.
And is that in lieu of building a new building? Is that like a piecemeal, say, wing for, a future project, you're gonna build, keep, we're obviously gonna keep renovating that, but I would hate for the town to spend 3.75 if we're gonna tear it down and put a new police station in 5 years, right?
or worse yet, not meet the accreditation by having to move a wall or something
Right.
down the road. I
Right.
mean, it almost makes that 3.75 more important to understand the accreditation factor before we even talk about the 3.75, because I hate to do something and then you guys come back and say, well,
Right.
accreditation says we gotta move this whole wing here 7 feet. I think we gotta learn about that accreditation
Yeah, right.
somehow, and I don't know, I understand what you're saying, I hear it's a person, but we need to understand it and how, I mean, there is no penalty, you're saying, but it's breaking the law.
Right. It's an unfunded mandate that they signed off on, and they said, these are something that we want, and they created a solution to a problem that didn't exist in Connecticut.
Right.
And in doing so, by, you know, and I know the Connecticut chiefs of police are lobbying to get that changed. But I can't tell you what the changes are gonna be.
And who's they that are mandating this, so I know the exact who they is?
They were the legislators that passed the Police Accountability Act
On the state level.
on the state level, which mandated some good things. So the body cameras were part of that, but there's also, you know, they had proposals in there for, you know, cameras in every vehicle. Every vehicle. It wasn't specific. You had to have a camera on a bicycle if you had a police bicycle.
Right.
As
That's
it
what
was
they,
defined.
and it was, I think it was well thought out.
This,
Newsworthy,
Tara, this screams infrastructure
very.
with the state that, you know, I bet you Mark Boughton, I know, is involved in that. We might be able to get some information on that. This seems like there's a perfect scenario for that infrastructure to be passed at the federal level.
Is one of the things they're trying to change, or we get that date pushed out at least farther away than 2025, do you think?
I think that is probably on the table. I haven't, there's been one meeting that was on, you know, a Zoom meeting, at the Capitol. And I know there's another one this week that the chiefs are testifying, to try and get it. I think the big thing is they're trying to get it away from this national standard to a state standard to make it more, affordable for the
Small
towns
municipalities.
to do it.
What towns are accredited in our area?
I think out of all of the police departments, I think there's 10 in Connecticut that are accredited.
Out of 169 municipalities, I think.
Well, yeah, they don't allow the police departments, but
Yeah, that's right, some utilize the state, I apologize.
Right.
So, all right, at least 130, I would have to estimate. How many do you think?
This sounds like a problem much larger than any of us in this room. So
Yeah.
send me the
Yeah.
information you have. I'll reach
Yeah,
I
back to
agree.
Craig and Steve, and I'll
Okay.
call the COG tomorrow once I read what you've got.
sure.
Any other questions before I go on to the next question?
I have, well,
Go ahead.
no, I mean, I have operating questions for
Then
this year's
go ahead.
budget.
for operating. Yeah, because I'm not going operating.
Okay, so my biggest question has to do with this year's negative contingency, where you know, there's an analysis that predicts where there might be salary savings that are unforeseen but predictable, and we added $30,000 to that contingency, or the first selectman added $30,000 to that contingency from 45 to 75. I think there was an analysis of that. So are we comfortable with that number, especially given that we think overtime might be overspent and that we're having trouble recruiting people, so we might need to actually increase starting salaries to recruit people? So what do we think about the negative contingency?
I think we've had, you know, I think Marcia could probably speak better to the numbers in the past that we have had in there and haven't used effectively, so.
So walk us through it, Marcia. There's a lot of numbers on there. So we're all just staring at it. I can't follow it. So
All right.
help us out here, Marcia.
Each of the years,
Sorry.
this was the final budget. In 2 of the years, it was net with the contingency, so we'd have to add that back. And some of the years, we had extra in the budget and we transferred it to other departments' budgets. So that brings us to the original gross budget that, and this was the actual spending. So the surplus in 18 was 176,000, and trying to just look back, a lot of it was wages and overtime. We just looked at things over 20,000, and part of the cause of that was a military leave. In 2019, we were under budget by 204, and again, the same 2 categories, and part of that was military leave. In 2020, that we were 282 under budget, and those 2 categories plus wages while training, but the wages while training were down because of COVID. And then in 2021, that It was 104 under budget, holiday wages, because officers get to pick between taking time off for the holiday or getting paid for the holiday, and more people took time off. The budget assumes 100% of them get paid. And then there was savings in uniforms last year. Those were the two biggies. So because of these figures, we thought that we could increase it from 45,000. I think it was 60 or 75,000.
Yeah, 75. Yeah. Members support that.
Answer your question, Dan, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, no, I think it does. I just, you know, the positions that are being tough to fill, is that just because there's just nobody available, or because you know, we're competing on entry-level salaries?
Where we normally would get 200 applicants
Yeah.
for, I think we had
60.
60,
Wow.
and of the 60,
And then only had 25 go to the oral board. It's just a sign of
and
the
then we had
time,
some
you know.
no-shows, even though they met the criteria for
Yeah.
our selection process.
We're talking with other towns, they're all experiencing the same.
So
Type
are,
issues.
I mean, is there a bidding war to get these few people who are qualified and applying?
The laterals are going to more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we compare to other towns in terms of starting salary?
I think we're competitive, but the laterals are not looking at that. They're looking at the top step.
Yeah.
And of the 5 laterals that we interviewed, one just changed his mind. 2 changed their mind, decided to stay with their own agencies. 1 we lost to another federal agency, so there really wasn't any competition with that. And another left. He was very upfront that as a retired trooper, he worked in this town as a resident for 12 years, and if they're going to hire him as a regular officer, he's going to go. And before we even got too far, they decided that they were going to open it up, and he took the job. So it wasn't a money thing for those guys.
Yep. Okay.
Everyone wants to be a firefighter nowadays. Sorry, guys.
Okay, any more operational? Ryan, operational? Mary, operational?
I just
Lee?
had a question. One of the other slides, you mentioned one of the issues is the increased town holidays, and I didn't quite understand what that.
Juneteenth.
Oh,
Yeah.
So we went from paying 13 to 14.
okay.
Which is about $16,000
For that day.
for police.
Brianna, you on? You have any operational questions?
No, the couple that I had were already answered,
All right.
so I think I'm good.
Okay, so let's wind this up. What do we have in the seized asset account, and what do we have in the outside police fund?
The outside police fund, I'm going to get an update because we have to switch from cash to accrual because that could make a big difference. But as of June 30th, the outside police fund had 267,000. We've done, I think we did the marshmallow. No, the marshmallow was before that. We did one last month.
The drone, 17.
Drone.
Is it 17,000?
And then there's another 11.5.
Yeah, there's an increase. It was
Yeah, we
another
just got that.
Okay,
another 11 or 12.
11.5.
so we're still at
Yeah, that's.
240,000. Plus any profits from this year, and I just, when you talked earlier before the meeting, I just sent the email to get the accrual information. The asset forfeiture fund has, had 78,000 in it, at the beginning of the fiscal year.
And we've used none of that.
We probably used 4,000 for Greylock, the.
Cellbrite. No, Grey Key's a grant. It's Cellbrite, but
Cellbrite.
that's a recurring expense.
And I.
But it's only about 4,000.
Recurring.
Yes.
Annually recurring?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And let me just, while you guys are talking, I'll pull up the trial balance, because that one we don't do, have to do an accrual adjustment for. So if you talk, I will look. Apparently, I won't look.
Okay. Well then, if you're not looking there, can you pull up the, Board of Selectmen approved some things tonight, didn't they? What'd you all approve tonight?
The 39K in capital for the consultant and
The outside fund, I saw something from Ginny for the 110,000 for the vehicle on the outside fund. No? Did I miss an email?
Not
You
tonight.
know? Okay.
The only change tonight, that besides approving the the placement of some of these,
Yeah, but there was a vehicle in there, wasn't there?
11.5 for the marshmallow.
11.5.
we had
53.
approved the police
There was, I thought I saw
previously,
110
there's
in
5
there.
items.
11.5, go ahead, there's another one. What's the next one?
There's a police vehicle in the ARPA money for 53,755, and
38,
2
what
in the
else was
capital.
third one?
Fund, storage,
Yeah.
that's it.
There was 3 of them memos attached, I thought. 3 requests, I thought I saw. What's that one?
This is the cover letter.
Okay, my bad. Okay. So these are the ones that we're talking about from the 267, correct?
The ones, let me pull up the capital, that, one is coming from ARPA, 2 I think are just coming from cash. The police, incident command vehicle is coming, let me pull it up. The police vehicles, the incident, critical incident response vehicle is coming from a combination of outside services and asset forfeiture,
Okay. So
provided it gets approved, by the people that approve
we have
outside.
240, so 310. And how much is that?
110,
110. So we have 200 left as a balance.
and that's without this year's lottery.
So now you brought something to our attention as you walked in the door.
Two items that we didn't bring up from a request for yet that were in the works over the past year were a record system storage update for 35,000 that we were going to ask
In there,
for.
yes.
And our rifle replacement program for 100,000.
125, based on the
Yeah, that was
last
it.
price.
Those were, that's why I was questioning how much we could use out of that and what our threshold low number was. And we weren't able to determine that there was one.
The policies that I've seen only have an upper number on it.
I don't think we ever had one with the seized assets.
No, and that's gotta go through a grant, we can't just.
No, asset forfeitures are certain requirements of, you
Right.
can't use
We
it for
can't-
anything,
we
there's
can't-
only certain
Right.
requirements you can use
I'm
that
pretty
money
sure
for.
we can't take the rifle money.
No,
No,
it's a
weapons.
vehicle or other, like we
So
bought
that
our
money-
LPRs out
so
of there.
this, what's in there can go towards the command vehicle,
The 200, yeah.
right? So the 70 can go towards the 110. Then we could pull the other 40 out of the outside fund. That's 110, right? 70 out of
Yeah,
seized
yeah.
assets,
I'm just
70 out
trying
of
to do
seized
that.
assets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'll give you still some $4,000 to pay the next year's annual fee, and hopefully we'll recoup some of this money and build up, correct? Or
even if we do 60 out of asset and
Yeah.
60 out of the outside services to leave a little, there's still money trickling in, but there's no, I don't know when it's coming in because our narcotics officer that's doing those just depends when cases close and the money gets dispersed. So
60 and 60, that's 120.
It's like,
So now this rifle replacement, is that all in, all or nothing, or is that something that can be done?
The reason it started, it's all or nothing. The reason it started was because we were getting, I don't know, about 8 or 9 of our officers use rifles from the 1033 program. And with the changes in the law, the military surplus program, we weren't allowed to take any more assets for the last 2 years. It was like suspended. And then they were taught that the changes in the program was they could, they, meaning someone from the town could make an issue, and we would have to go before, we'd have to have a hearing to justify the, why we have the stuff that we have, even though we don't have that much, but the rifles are some, and we would have to go out, they could just say no, the government could say, we want our stuff back, just give it back to us. And we didn't have the money or replacement, and now these guns are roughly, I think it was 2001 when we,
they're over
Yeah.
18 years old.
so
When we bought them, we traded in guns to buy
Right.
8, and then we just kept buying chunks of rifles when we could squeeze a couple into the budget over the next 4 years.
So was this something that was just missed?
No, it's in the 10-year plan. It's been in the
Yeah.
10-year plan. Put it in there like 10 years ago.
So that will push it along when they decided that we could lose these old, and they're old new stock. And the rifles that we own are, like Matt said, they were purchased in 2000. I don't know, when were those? When we did-
So
2002 or
No.
2003.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
regardless of that, let's go on to the next stage. What else is in your 10-year plan that's next year, the following year, that we don't know about? Is there something next year coming up that, like a big item that you
Well,
guys know about that we don't know
I don't
about?
have anything
Just-
on
No, don't take this
no.
wrong. This is
No,
not a
no,
wrong
no.
thing. Realize,
No.
this is not a wrong thing. This is trying to think through
One thing
things.
I'd just like to mention, because I don't have, like, the body cameras, like, that was a big push, but that is a pretty serious cost annually, and that's just gonna show up this year, right? I think this year's the first year, because it
Yeah.
was a purchase year, so you buy the equipment, and then you pay for the service, and then the next year, you don't get any equipment, but you're paying $25,000 every
Mhm.
year.
Yeah.
We're gonna come back next year for replacement tasers.
Well, and we also,
And what's that look like, dollar-wise?
almost the same,
It's
40,000.
yeah, per year.
per year.
So it's
And
not
the,
very much.
and the car cameras are due, and I think that's in here, right? That was another request that went in, and that's 33 a year.
But what we can use is we can use the same storage system. We don't have to maintain our own storage any longer.
That's the,
You know, and there's familiarity with the program, and it's not that much of an add. It's like you're not adding on new storage.
Questions, Dan?
No.
Ryan?
The rifle replacement, how many rifles is this? And if we-
37.
37?
37 rifles.
And is this something that we can, is it the age of the rifle? Is it something where we can, you know, maintain them for a couple years to
They've
get a
been-
couple more years?
They're parts. They're just like
The
pile
best,
parts.
the best.
We've replaced all that,
So we've done
so
that,
it's,
yeah.
now it's barrel replacements, and we're not even standard anymore because we're into the parts for some. And when they were purchased over time, they were almost identical, but different.
Gotcha.
We have guys that were carrying rifles that were like this and long, you can't even
Okay.
maneuver with it. So they're overdue. When we started the program, it was basically on traded in old stuff.
Right.
So we've been,
I guess to answer your question, if you wanted to have this rifle in your home, it'd be perfect for you. But we can't count on something
For sure. Yeah.
that old
Yeah.
to
Understood.
function.
Do you have the balances of the police outside fund on an annual basis? Do we know what that grows per year?
It depends on what we spend it on,
No, I mean the
the,
growth of the balance, like roughly.
I don't think we can do that only because, like, one year it was, really, really high because they were doing utility work. And I just looked up the asset forfeiture, and not much has been happening this year with asset forfeiture, so no big revenue so far.
Can we assume with the federal road project there'll be a lot of utility work?
Yes.
So it's
2
about,
years.
it's, last year we earned 90,000 in that fund for the year. And last year, I think, it was the year before that was the big year, so.
Questions?
Yeah, just looking at the worksheets and the equipment line item, it had, there was 1192 added back in, is that, because it said, there's a note in here that to add, for taser duty cartridges and batteries if they got cut. Was that already in the budget line item, or does that need to get added back in?
We did add back in I thought the number was 6,000, but we just,
Yeah, I think cumulatively it is.
okay, that was added back in.
Okay, I didn't see it in the spreadsheets, but there's a.
Right, but right now, none of these numbers we're talking about are added in budgets, it's utilizing the outside police force, police fund and the seized assets.
That was an operating cost that she was asking about.
Right. Okay.
What is the requirement for leaving the building with a rifle?
I'm sorry?
What is the requirement for leaving station with a rifle?
Everybody has to, you mean?
Like anytime someone goes out on patrol, they have to have a rifle in
Yes,
their car?
yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah. And
So
all
for the
have
replacement program, is there a way to incrementally swap out the rifles? Or does it all have to be done at once?
Well, we wouldn't be able to, everybody wouldn't be trained on the same weapons or the same level. So,
They're
if we
also
get,
trying to get a standardization within, like, just putting and mounting them in the cars. Like, right now, we have different lengths, different
It's a
optics.
chore to
They're
figure out
I
the
see-
mount.
I saw here.
So we're trying to standardize the
You need
locking
new
and
storage, I
guess.
basic,
Yeah.
simple stuff, but,
Yeah.
so,
That was-
plus availability is another
Right.
thing now.
I
It's
was
become,
gonna ask what vendor you're looking at, I don't know, but.
yeah.
All right.
And to your question, here's where the 3 items are added back,
Yeah.
but 2 were, other contingencies were taken out. And so they net to 1192.
Operationally, I think they're fine. I think
Yeah.
operational budget, you guys are fine. It's just a matter of meeting these outside needs with the outside asset fund or the outside
Mhm.
fund and the seized assets.
well, my concern was, and,
Go ahead.
and that one, the third vehicle, which apparently, I didn't know that was.
It's in ARPA. The third vehicle's in ARPA. The goal we wanted to do was to take that out of ARPA and have utilized the outside police fund to fund that. That was the original goal when we were talking was
Okay.
that would give the first selectman $54,000 of ARPA money to use elsewhere.
Which is probably still, like I talked to you about, even if we order it by the time, I ordered a vehicle in September and I still don't have it. So there's nothing to say July 1. It's not as if I'm ordering it, we're going to have it in the middle of July. So we will have some time for that fund to increase.
And I don't see,
Yeah.
us doing less work than last year. Last year, you said it was about 90,000. I think we could pretty much
Yeah, I think you'd be
gauge our
fine.
past years, and last year was a bad year. There wasn't a lot of work going on with the projects that they've already approved for down south, and the amount of, which I think is it's already started up.
Yeah, that's going to be going through the.
I think we'd be able to, I didn't know if there was a low number, and apparently there isn't. So
It's your comfort zone because
Mhm.
then your hands are tied. If you come to us like for another drone, we don't have anywhere to go. So this ties your hands a little bit to the point of
right.
pretty much whenever you come to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance from your outside fund, you don't ever, rarely get turned down from a need because it's your money. We feel like it's your money. As we're into this debt bubble, our goal was to free up a car out of this. My goal, I appreciate, like to talk to the board here, to free up the car so we could utilize it in ARPA and to start a process where that outside fund would buy one of the 3 cars every year. So we would have, we could do 2 through us and 1 through the outside fund and everybody be happy. And plus fund your other needs.
I'm comfortable with you doing that if you want it, Because like I said, I'm not going to order right on July. I need the 3 patrol vehicles right away, or to do those. and then we can wait, and as it increases, come to you to do the incident command vehicle. It's,
Is that, Dan, your thoughts?
You're agreeable.
If that's
No,
their
it's if
preference.
you're agreeable, we're all
as long as the chief, you know,
Talking about-
right, you
Yeah,
agreement?
I think,
That's
I don't
fine.
think we're risking much, because I know, based on our past history with getting money back into that fund, that work is out there.
There's always gonna be work.
Now, the thought process, part of this discussion was that we have this gentleman's or, agreement on the table where we find a way to best utilize the outside police fund to help us. Because we're gonna go through 2 or 3 years of tough budget years, correct, Marcia? I mean, we got 2 or 3 ahead of us that are tough. So we can utilize some of that money to meet some of our other needs. That was the thought. Marcia, your thoughts, since you understand this more than anybody.
I think that works, that then it frees up ARPA. ARPA has more possibilities for what we could use it
Correct.
for.
Mhm.
Yes, that was the mindset. So what we're going to agree to is right here, so what we're talking about is you're gonna go to the Board of Selectmen with an outside and seized assets request. I don't know how you divvy it up to cover the $54,000 vehicle for right now, right? You're gonna cover the 125 and the rifles. And there was something else.
And then the 110 and
The 110 we're gonna wait on until we make sure we have the money. You can wait 6 months, you said, until you get money back.
Sure.
Right? Until we get to a point where you're comfortable. Is this okay?
yes.
Were we adding the record storage update?
Yes, the record storage
That
is,
was the third thing.
because that will free up space.
I
In
knew
the
there was a
limited
third
space
thing,
we
I
have
told you.
downstairs, we'll combine our whole record storage and retention into one, what'd you call it, Matt? Unit?
It's a modular.
Modular.
In your dentist office, the sliding,
Yeah.
it's set up like that, but for.
And it'll
for
free up a
police
whole room
records.
downstairs and it'll all be upstairs. It makes it easier for our record supervisor, as well as there's room for growth for cases we have to store.
And it's portable, so if you want to build a new
Forever.
building, you can unbolt it and it can be brought into the new.
Yeah.
Or a bigger room or.
Would we still have to wait until July
Not
to
from-
put the vehicle order in?
Not from, if
If
it's
we went
coming
through
out
outside
of,
services?
if it's coming out
That's
of the
it.
general fund budget, you have to wait till July. If it's
Right.
coming out of the other budgets, you don't
No.
have to wait.
Alright,
No.
so I'll start the process. on
You
that.
gotta start the paperwork through the
Because
Board
we're
of
looking,
Selectmen.
we're looking at a long time to get.
Yeah,
that
no, I'll
No,
do it
that-
at the house.
The only thing is, we won't get it done before their next meeting, so we can do it on our next meeting.
Okay.
Our next
Fine.
meeting is a month from the other day. So, and if it's really urgent, we have a bunch of meetings coming on, we could probably add it to the
Yeah.
agenda.
Okay.
So, Tara, would you be comfortable with this?
If that's the best way to skin the cat, then I'm all for it.
Dan?
Go for it.
Ryan?
Well, I just one question. So when we were at Capitol, I remember the critical response vehicle was in pretty bad shape. You had mice in there. Is that really the third priority at this point, behind the rifles? And well, obviously the vehicle replacement's number one. But would you put that above the rifle replacement or behind? Because I mean, we're talking about rifle going.
We've
before.
talked, I think the rifle and records needs to be,
Got it. Okay.
that's our,
Just want to make sure we
Now it
got
has a giant marshmallow over it, so it's a little bit.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
doing
that's
better,
good.
it just, it needs replacement,
Yeah,
but
for
we,
sure.
we can make do what we have for right now and let that
They,
fund
the
increase.
guys
and-
have done a lot of work to it to help it, because we didn't think we were gonna be able to get, a replacement for it this year. And I think, that, like they said, having it undercover has helped with some of the exterior sun damage that was done to it, but,
It's not getting wet anymore. It's-
Mary, you
Really.
good with what
Yeah,
we
sounds
proposed?
good.
Brianna, are you good with what we proposed?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's actually a really great way of making it work.
Alright,
So that's 323,000 that's coming out of those two
yeah,
funds.
we understand that. We know we're gonna go down low, and they're gonna bring some back. Right?
Order in increments.
2 years worth of work on it. That's a lot of.
Yeah.
That is-
We just appreciate trying, you understand what we're trying to do,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Willing.
we wanna fund you obviously to the max. This is a tough few years, so if we can work like this, I think it's a great way to do things.
Sure.
But you can, don't look nervous.
No, I'm not nervous, I'm just going back to ARPA now that we got that 54,000 freed up. Thanks for that, go back and relook ARPA again, but,
Correct.
um,
Appreciate you guys.
No
Really
problem. We
do.
appreciate everything you guys
Thank you
do.
for everything you do. Go back and think about it. Get your paperwork done. Talk to Marcia before before we go make sure you're comfortable. We have a few days here. By Wednesday, we need a definite. We thought about this and it makes sense to us. I mean, us being the three of you.
I mean, we've spoken,
You don't
but
need
we'll,
that
we'll talk
other
to you
number.
again Wednesday.
Yeah, I just
For,
don't want you to have buyer's remorse.
the accreditation.
No,
we
I-
are
You just
we
want
are
the
mortgaging
standards.
you a
yeah,
little
just
bit. I don't want
tell me
buyer's
what you guys
remorse.
need to be
That's all. You
comfortable
understand that, right? I mean,
Yep.
Well,
No, we
that's
got it.
like
It's-
with the
there's no
rifles, we buy
emergency
something
on
for
that
20
one.
years.
Okay.
So
Right.
You don't have to worry about this.
We can talk about it.
Well, you don't have to worry about it. 20 years is.
Yeah.
Right.
And
As
then
long
that's
as-
really it. Yeah,
All
no,
right.
I'm comfortable.
All right. Thank you so much
Thank
for all
you.
you
Appreciate
do.
everybody's help.
You guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll see you in the morning some point.
I know.
They seem to frequent the places I frequent in the morning, like. Yeah. Okay, so you understand, right? What?
Yeah.
We freed up a vehicle now with
Great.
our outside
It's great that
funds,
they're
so
able to do
that
that.
gives the
More
first
ARPA.
selectman more ARPA freedom.
Back to the old drawing board.
Yeah.
I don't know who's next, but I made an executive decision that I am.
I like the way you think.
Mine's short, and sweet, to the point, so.
Sorry to see your letter just now.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't have the time.
I know. Thanks for leaving.
Thank you. Not anymore. As of Friday. Sit down here, son.
I'll sit where Andy likes to sit, at the foot of the pig.
I'm not gonna keep you guys for an hour and 15, I'll promise you that.
No, it was important, we
kept
talked
them.
about that
We
though.
kept them.
Yeah, no,
It's important.
I just don't have that much to talk to you guys. You guys gave me everything I wanted, so. I
And
just,
then more.
Marcia, I used the slide that you asked me to.
I took it back, 'cause it's my nice pen.
I like that pen a lot, I gotta tell you. Go ahead, Ryan.
All right, so I'll go through the PowerPoints and then, well, I'll start with just what I have and then I'll go through the PowerPoints with you guys. So our increase this year is $8,200 or 4.94%. I like to use the dollar figure because otherwise the percentage looks too big. It's made up of three, I'll call them large, in our budget large items. It's $6,500 for a cleaning company. We've never had a cleaning company before. With COVID, we're actually probably a year late on the ask for the cleaning company. We just can't keep up with it anymore. Our calls have gone up. We just don't, to expect our members to do it has just become not really feasible. Tires, which for $1,200, which we show in the budget every year as a zero when we don't need them. This year we need to replace them on the utility truck. And 6 new chainsaws that were 10 years old. If it wasn't for those 3 increases, our budget actually had a decrease this year, so. But now I'll go through my PowerPoint for you guys, and then if you have any questions, just ask along the way. Accomplishments since last year, we placed the new engine 21 in service, which we had worked with the town on purchasing. Like everybody else, navigated the difficulties of COVID. We have totally renovated the first floor of the firehouse. We had a flood, so a lot of that money was insurance money, and some of it was our own money and our savings, because it was time to redo the firehouse, and the flood, which we got insurance money for, it was time to do it all right at one point. So, and responded to the increased call volume. Special news, if any, we have the largest probationary class we've had in a long time, which is good news. Chief, how many? 8 combined of junior members, which are under the age of 18, and adult members. So, standard key performance indicators, call volume has increased and we continue to meet the needs of the community and maintain a high level of efficient and cost-effective services. Hardships, if any, increased call volume, which you guys have all heard plenty about, and maintain a positive and clean, safe infrastructure. Affects the hardships of the budget, if any. Addition of the cleaning service, like I talked about, we just don't have the manpower to do it. They require tire and chainsaw replacement. Goals for next year: to continue to support our mission, respond to the increasing needs of the community, recruit and retain new members as we develop our future leaders. Hopefully someone else will sit here and talk to you guys at some point, not maybe me anymore. And just the continued training budget, which this year was offset partially by a grant, which is one of our decreases we had this year. The things that we consider, and I don't know where you guys are at with it, to continue to support our 10-year capital plan and our apparatus replacement plan. I know at one point it was cut. I don't know where you guys are at with that. Our feeling is, as long as whenever we need it, you guys are willing to work with us. How you guys finance it is up to you guys.
I'll roll you through that
Okay.
when we're done with your.
I think that's the last slide. Oh, thinking outside the box.
You didn't
Yeah.
think much outside.
No. Oh, no. And then there was the one about what are our efficiencies? And I said
Not
that.
thinking it's
I said, oh yeah, efficiencies. I said that we are your efficiency.
Nice.
I thought it was creative.
Yeah.
Any
Thinking of
questions?
that box.
There you go.
No, I don't think we have many questions. Your budget went up. We put the 500 back in the budget. We obviously, y'all are volunteers, and I know when the selectmen went through the budget, it was overwhelming, and there was a lot of things that had to get cut out, and I appreciate what they tried to do, but we found a way to feed back that 500 for the volunteers. If you could pull up, Marcia, the
On the
thing.
cleaning crew, I'm just curious, what do they clean?
They're
The whole fire?
The whole firehouse, and we're using the same company that headquarters
PowerPoint
uses.
or
Okay.
Excel.
Itself.
And how frequent, like?
Every week.
Go to center. So, go to Kenwood, I'm sorry. So, Ryan, what we did, and this is probably the first time I'm gonna walk this board through this as well, is currently they have 300,000 in their accounts right now from fundraising and from the years of fundraising. They get annually around 35,000 in fundraising a year. So you cover about 5,000 out of expenses a year out of this. This is all rough, Gary, so please,
Okay.
this is just a rough walkthrough.
Okay.
So at the end of the year, that'll leave you with about 330,000, a little bit of interest, 333. So then I walked it through. The first vehicle you're gonna need is in 2026, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to spend 300,000 of your dollars at that point. So with the cash flow, after you spend that 300,000, that's gonna leave you with 166. Go ahead, Dan, am I making a mistake?
No, I'm listening.
So we would have still 166 after your part, so you'd still have a little for the next vehicle. The town's responsible for 2/3 of that, which is in the 2026 is 600,000. So originally, the Board of Selectmen had took out the capital reserve. The yellow is what we put back in, or we talked about putting back in. If we put in 80,000 a year, each of the next 5 years, we'll only have to put in about 80,000 as a town to cover the town side.
Okay.
The center, the Candlewood side would be covered from their fund, and then as you go out in year 2032, you'll be back up to 361, and then I'm sure your next vehicle will be online.
Okay.
So does everybody understand my simple cash flow that we did? I just took the years, their annual fundraising, the costs that they cover out of it roughly, and subtracted out the vehicles. Now on the town side, I just picked a number that was sort of flatline, so you can see 80, 80, 80, and the year we bought the vehicle, we had to put 105 in. Then we'd start up again, 80, 80, to cover the next vehicle. It's simple, it's probably not as accurate as it should be, but I think it gives us a great guideline of how to fund these vehicles over time and not have to pay a big bill at once. So are those numbers basically what you understand too, Ryan, right?
Yeah.
That's about where you're at.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm comfortable with however you guys want to finance it, as long as I like the money going in as we go, because that way you guys are all not here. I don't have a new board that says no way, we're not paying our part. So I like it that way, but I'm comfortable with however you guys want to finance it.
Do you see what I did too, Tara, on this?
Yeah, I'm just curious, this was created recently, or was this part of the 10-year plan
No,
that
this
we've
is
been
me.
looking at?
This was me creating this, just to see, when you put in 0, I was always nervous too, because we cut from the reserve in prior years. So I know that we don't want to be handcuffed anymore going forward. So we got to try to chop it off in small chunks.
Yeah.
And if we funded 80,000, all we got to do, not all we have to do, I apologize, but the next year 80,000, the next year 80, and we'll get to the goal where the vehicle in 2026 really isn't going to cost us a lot of money. It's going to be a $900,000 vehicle, but we'll have it covered. We're not going to have a big
It almost
chunk.
becomes like an operating budget line item.
Correct. That's the way I laid this out. And the same thing with going on to the next vehicle. 'Cause after 2032, they're going to need another vehicle at some point.
Absolutely.
So this would just keep us.
I won't be here asking you for it.
No, but and again, I'll take questions, criticism. This is my idea of flattening this out of how to make it work.
This is how we get our debt down. I mean, this is the way.
Yeah, yep.
Planning is getting our
Right.
debt down.
Because they were not funding that.
Right.
Marcia, your thoughts?
That looks good.
So that's why we put the 80 back in
You get it.
as a reserve this year. And it's not a big number. It is a big number, but it's not a crazy number.
No, it's a good plan. It's exactly what I'm looking for. I think we need to do this across the board in many, many facets. So it's a great starting point. I can't believe 2032 is that close.
Shows up on the
Okay.
screen.
Until we got to
So
college.
basically, Chief and Ryan, that's what we've done. We put
Okay.
the money back in
Yep,
the
I see what you're
reserves.
saying.
I don't think we'll have a problem. You guys should have enough money to cover your part. Like I say, at the end of 20, you should still have 166 left in your balance, you know, within reason, 150 to, and then you'll be set up for the next one. Because you really don't, your fundraising isn't really
It's not gonna
driving a big
fluctuate.
number.
It's not going up.
Right, so. And I won't hold any of these numbers, this is just a
Yeah, yeah,
rundown.
yeah,
so.
no, I see.
All right,
Okay.
I think we're good then, right? Any questions for them? Chief, Ryan, any questions of you for us?
Nope, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
Enjoy your next one.
But you
I think
understand,
that's
right,
it.
everybody?
Where do we do it, the
No,
paving
I-
for across the street and the wall?
Glenn, that was
The
awesome.
paving across is in this year's capital, which moved forward, and it
Yeah,
across the street is in, shown
Next-
in next year, or the year
Next- or the year
after, our 10-year plan.
yeah, we need by the firehouse.
Yeah.
Same with the next.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, you guys.
And I think that's how we got originally.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Go on.
Oh, Marcia, it is, Well, you know, we got away from it a couple times. The problem is, we can't afford to get away from anything right now. It's gotta be tight with these years coming up. We need to do that with the police on theirs as well, and then roll it all into, and sit them down in a meeting, and have them here for one of our meetings, and just put it out for us, and allow us to look at it. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, I
And
concur.
and the leasing option that you're
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, let's get these other gentlemen in here.
It's funny because everything is now like software.
All right.
Everything is licensing fees.
We had gone with 95.
You know where we had to go, right? Pete had a fire at his house?
Oh,
Pete?
no.
Yeah.
Chimney fire at his house. Come on, just,
Our Pete, Captain Pete.
yeah,
Yeah,
just ran into his
Major
house.
Pete,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, Major Pete.
Yeah.
Major Pete,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yep,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
as only
Everything
Peter.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured you'd get a call to go somewhere.
Hi, Lou.
Didn't imagine
We
it would've been
can't, we have
there.
not been in this room. Right, Lou, we haven't had a call, right?
Oh,
Or your office.
No, this is going well. Nobody's mad. Everybody's going well.
This is good stuff.
Who's driving this train tonight?
Me,
All right.
Sarah will make the presentation.
Sorry, I have to-
Any technical questions? Wayne and I will handle
Still
them.
up, I'm good.
what?
Hey, Lou.
I thought he was still on the wall.
Oh, okay. Do we have a, or do I just point? Okay. Not used to that. All right, so if you want to point, it's all picture. The first one is just our last year's call volume, which we went over that night as people came in. I forgot I have it on that side. So just last year, we ended up with 928 fire and 1999 for our EMS. And of course, you've seen us around town. There's doing our COVID test handouts and just some of our incidents. So that's an accident on Super 7. You can keep, I'm sorry. That's Newtown Mutual Aid. That's our EMS staff. That's that famous RV fire on the Lake Road. And that was just one of our incidents in the snow. I think that was January, early January. So, all right. So just to give you an idea of what it looks like this year. So we keep talking about all of these increases that we've had. So as of, well, we can update it because we just added one call for each fire and EMS going up to Major Franks' house. So last year at the same time, we did 130 calls and we're at 205, which is about a 58% increase on the fire side. And on the EMS side is 447 to 290, so about a 54% increase.
452 as of now.
Yeah, so that's, so,
And just so you guys know, this is going on everywhere. It's not just Brookfield. I mean, Brookfield's driven by the growth of this town, for sure. But across the board, like at work, I'm seeing numbers like this increase. EMS is increasing everywhere. The EMS system, which Wayne will talk about, in his area, has changed. The fire department, the request for the fire department in general has increased due to the building that's going on around here, and basically a culture change in what people expect. People have, when people come from moving here from the cities and stuff, they expect when they call the fire department, they help everything. You're plumbers or electricians. They expect, if you have a problem like that at your house, that's what they do, and that's just a culture change of people that have moved here that are used to that kind of service, in a city. So that's also driving part of our increases in responses. So.
All right, so our next slide, just Glenn always says we don't do a good job of selling ourselves. So here's us selling ourselves. In the past 2 years, we've spent about $700,000 of our organization money. So that's our fund drive money, money on our investments, and just some of the stuff that we've purchased. So we have quite a stockpile of COVID supplies up at Center Station, and we needed to put that all behind something. So we have both the fire, EMS, and police department storage up there. Training with OSHA coming in, as well as we had to make a shift to online training because we still have to train. So when we had COVID, we went to an online training program. Our operational technology, which is it's called Samsara, which is on all of our fire apparatus and the ambulances, and it monitors speed, the engine life, a whole bunch of reports and such that come back to our chief officers and engineers. Our salamander tags, which are accountability. Our equipment, we did a refurb on Tower 100, which was the first time we took town money to purchase or to help with a apparatus replacement. So that was an upgrade to give us another hopefully 20 years on that truck. We bought an EMS first responder, Medic 1 Tahoe, which we're still waiting for, but that's in there. Building repairs, we did, our building's 25, almost 30 years old, so we had to do some refurbs there. And obviously computers. And so far this year, EMS uniforms, we had to buy after the storms back in September. We needed to buy some new trash pumps to help with pump outs, and all of the necessary parts that go along with that. Some vehicle repairs, vehicle purchases. We were purchasing 2 new utility trucks and a new car 1. We've put in a new parking lot at Center. Again, some more computer technology, TV for our training room at Center, and our HVAC system, which is a capital item, but it fell short, so we're picking up the remainder of that for the $17,000. So just to give you an idea of what we've spent our money on, that we do, put a lot back into our building and our operation. So that was our increase. So we just wanted to show that to you really quick. So overall on the fire side, we were looking for a 3.41% increase, which was roughly $12,000. Overall, our industry is seeing an 8 to 12% increase. It can be more, can be less. Obviously, a lot of our stuff has to be steel. Pike poles and plastic don't work very well in fire, so we're experiencing a lot of that increase just because of what our product is made out of. So, we went through the exercise with the first selectman and the things that were cut, and this is what we feel that we need to have returned to our budget. So our equipment, the $6,000, our service and testing contracts, we do a lot of that in the spring. And so our ladder testing, our hose testing, the truck ladder testing, both aerial devices have to be tested. So that will be forthcoming, and that falls under our equipment, and should anything fail, which oftentimes happens, we need to replace. So that's something that we don't know until it actually happens, and we don't want to be on the losing end of that. In terms of training, it was cut $3,000. So far this year, we've spent $16,400, and our budget for this current year was, sorry, I gotta look here, $12,000. $8,000, $8,500. So again, OSHA came through. There's certain things we have to have. So Fire 1 and Fire 2 we run at our fire station. This year we have 5 people currently in Fire 1. We had 4 people in Firefighter 2. We ran an incident safety officer class. That was 11 people, including EMS members that took that, and our EMS staff. We currently have 4 members in Fire Officer 1 in Bethel. and fire service instructor, we're gonna run that in this fall, and that's a bargain basement price of $6,100 from the state, and only the state can run that for us. So we'll open that up if we can to outsiders as well, but we're capped at 18, so that's what we need back on that. Our physicals, or our personnel, it's the $4,000 was cut from the medical physicals. We have 60 firefighters and 24 EMS members that need to have physicals every year. Last year, our EMS staff was just coming on, and so they didn't need physicals, but we now need to get everybody physicals who didn't have a physical, so that's going to eat up what monies were left from last year.
And that's an OSHA requirement due to respiratory use.
The other question that we had, so that's what we'd like to see come back. The contingency fund in the past, when we had a storm, and Andy and Lou can talk to this more, when we have to staff and we, then turn around and feed our people and the police, the dispatchers and town crew, we then bring the bills over to you folks, and we just didn't know if we wanted to continue on that vein or if we want to set up some sort of contingency fund. I know we've bantered back and forth on that. I don't know if either one of you want to address that.
It's however you guys want to. The bill always gets paid. We don't know if you want to budget for it on our end or you wanted to handle it on yours. It's always an item. It's a few $1,000s a year, and it's not a lot, depending on what happens as far as storm goes. And a lot of times it's reimbursable items, like Kevin takes the receipts for FEMA if it's a FEMA event. So I don't know how you guys want to do it, but Steve had one way he wanted to do it. For years we had a contingency in there, and he took it out a few years ago. So we just didn't want to, if you wanted to continue that way or how you.
General practices, we took everybody's contingency away and brought it in-house.
Loans reports, that's fine.
Because it was
That's
just
fine.
a general,
Yes.
easy way
That's-
to do.
Yeah, we just wouldn't be doing our job, our extra expenses that aren't, covered.
And that's the bill that just came in. You
Yes,
submitted one of these bills.
yes, there's a bill
Yes.
for EMS staffing for snowstorms and stuff.
So on that one, we have given you unexpectedly this year, like $30,000 or $40,000 from FEMA. Could we net that with the FEMA cost that we've given you? Could you pay it out of there instead of waiting until washing the FEMA revenue through to next year?
You're talking about 30,000 we got when?
I don't really remember the numbers, but from the storm Isaias,
Isaias?
thank you, that one.
Mhm.
that,
Gotten very good at saying that one.
That we've given you, I think the total between the two departments was maybe 42,000. Could we say, okay, well, of that, and I know that you're keeping some,
For wear and tear.
some of
Yep.
it for the time, but of that money that's come in, couldn't we pay this out of that? Because you weren't expecting that revenue, and we could just net those together, and so you pay that, and it'll be just less that you have.
So if we have a FEMA event, I have no problem doing that. When we have a snowstorm and it's not
Correct.
covered.
I'm just talking about this year, that we had the
So-
FEMA event.
What are you saying? If we have a reimbursable event from the FEMA,
Yeah,
we would net
absolutely.
it out. But if it's a storm that nobody FEMA
Okay.
covers, it would come out of our contingency.
Right.
Like, so last year's FEMA is why they had a big surplus.
Candlewood Inn, 506 Candlewood Lake Road. Find them dealing with possible injuries. One car off the road up a hill. Caused by a third party.
Sorry.
You need to go?
No, we're here. We have people for that.
Okay.
207 and 448, 49.
Last year,
If a second patient comes in,
year end '21, they had some FEMA money, and we don't see it till a year later, it kind of washes itself out.
If it's a FEMA event, I have no problem absorbing it that way, that's fine. But if like these snowstorms that happen, like we had $3,700 in bills so far this year for snowstorms. We don't budget that. It's always been, we bought the bill here and we get paid when we upstaff. We took that out.
And so what I'm saying is, you have 40, let's say call it 30, because I don't remember the amount, 30,000 of unexpected revenue from the FEMA claims that we made. That could we just say, okay, of that 30,000 of unexpected revenues, we're going to pay this $3,700 bill through that.
The issue, I think, was the personnel, wasn't that?
So some went to personnel, but not all, I don't know if someone.
Some
Some of
of
it was
it
for
was
equipment, some of
equipment.
it was for a lot, you know, I don't remember what exactly, I didn't, Kevin did it, you know, he did he asked us questions. I mean, I think when the snowstorm comes, we need to make that needs to come here. And that was the deal we had with Steve, that it comes here, and that's why we took it out of the budget. Because otherwise, we had an extra amount for coverage for storms and stuff, you know.
I think we cover it out of the contingency this year, but I
Yeah.
do think we sit down as a group.
Sure, going
and
forward,
come up with a plan going
100%.
forward.
Sure.
So
If we-
everybody's on the same page.
Here's the deal, if we get a FEMA check like that, we can put it in an account, and we could tick off it for everything, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I think we just need
100%.
to have an agreement on how to handle it going
Oh,
forward.
Yeah.
And I think we do. That
Sure, we can do that.
Starting July 1st, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's
So
like,
I-
absolutely.
yeah.
You know, but we've gotta get the FEMA check for it, I can't like start in the hole, you know, if we put it in there, and then whatever we get, cause Kevin's working on one right now for us for IDA.
Right.
Yeah, and we could take that and put that in for, you know, absolutely, you know, but work off of that. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
All right, let's, on to the next one here.
All right, so our EMS operations, so this one, after a lot of debate, it's at 28.77% increase, and largely that's our personnel. That's seeing almost a $300,000 increase. And obviously, we're doing a lot more calls, and Wayne can talk to what we figured the per cost. He's got that all worked out. But what we need back on that is the operations of 5,000. It looks like that came from our medical supplies, and obviously we're doing an increase in calls. We can't do an increase in calls with less materials. Training, again, $5,000 was cut. So far this year, we've spent $13,200. We had budgeted about $5,000. We currently are running an EMR class. We've finished an EMT class. Wayne has more on the burners to get going, so we are doing more training. We're getting more people certified. The question was about the communications. If that $3,000 was returned, there was kind of trying to read through where we stood on that one.
It looked like the Board of Selectmen added 3,000 back, correct? If I'm reading that right?
But we can go through that, yeah. That,
Okay.
we don't have to talk to this.
Okay,
We can-
Okay. We did on both the fire and EMS side, we did increase our billing revenue. And, you know, most of those, it's always a moving target, just like anything. So
We had a couple
we're
of
doing
good
our
work.
best.
We had a
with
couple of
that.
good workshops with Marcia and the first select woman. We sat down. We were able to. We felt by pushing we had 760 for our billing revenue. We were trying to be conservative with the increased call line that we're seeing. Now they're not all transports, remember, and they're not all billable calls, but we felt going to $800,000 was we felt comfortable with that. That was probably the max. So we added 40,000 to that, which showed a difference. Which we had a good discussion about. Originally, I asked for 10 hours a day. I had asked for 50 hours, I believe, right? It was 5 10-hour, right? It was 10 hours.
Yeah, it was
5
5
days a
8-hour
week.
days.
5
Well,
10
originally it was
5 10 hours.
originally it was
We
5
came in
10
and
hours.
asking for 8 to 6. 10 hours for the extra paramedic. We agreed to cut it down to 8 to try. With the preface that you guys need to understand that if we see a call, this is a notoriously slow time of year for us, and I'm already crazy busy. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a magic 8 ball. I wish I did. I'm just going on record that if we have to come back and say, look, we need to add hours here and in here, that we're all okay with that. I've never come back before. We've always absorbed all the hour increases that we've done operationally. I can't do that anymore at the cost. We've really gotten lean. Like we're covering the night shift right now that the towns that we're paying for. So we're keeping up with it, but I'm concerned that if it does explode, I was okay starting with 8 hours, and we're going to be flexible with it. It's not Chief Woodkey's going to really eye the trends, so we'll know when our high incidence hours are, and we'll kind of move it around. It might even be on the weekend. The weekends are busy on Candlewood Lake. Well, the paramedic might be working on the weekend and not during the week. We're going to kind of flex that 40 hours that we have.
When does the Linden open?
Like
Well,
next week, 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Anytime?
it was
Yeah.
supposed to be, well, I kept getting pushed back from November, December, then it moved all the way up to February, and we were expecting it to be open for the first week of March. We'll probably see it by the 1st of April when they'll actually be up and operational.
And
They
they said May
started moving
15th.
in property.
Yeah, they said May
For
15th
those.
they might be fully occupied. The good thing is, the paramedic is the large cost. So when we have to make that next move to hire a 30 ambulance, it's already halfway there. you have to come up with an EMT, which is a much less costly item to have the third ambulance during the high incidence hours. I can't explain what's going on. It's very busy, other than the fact that the town is developing. I know Tara's got Rover on her phone, and if any else you want it, you can be there. You probably don't because it goes off all the time. But we've been keeping up with it. The community is safe. We're covering all the calls. So far this year, we've given up one call, mutual aid, where we were doing about 10 a month last year because of our staffing changes that we made. And we were at a fire. We just couldn't spare anybody else. So we probably could have covered it if it was another day. So I feel pretty comfortable with our staffing levels, but I just want everyone to understand that we might have to come back. I might not, but I just want it out there.
So we did talk, you needed 23,000.
23,000, correct.
Does that include that 3,000 communications, or was
No,
that-
it looked like that came back in.
It
was
looks like that was
13
right.
for,
23 on top of that?
it was 13 for the fire department, 10 for EMS. That I
Yeah,
feel.
and the 3,000 is
It's
outside of that.
outside of
Outside of
that.
that, it looks like you guys
Okay.
already cleared
So,
it, yeah.
so in our exercise, we put back the 23,000 to try to make this all work for everybody. I don't think there was any objections in that to what we put back in. Again, the first selectman had a tough task of
Very.
of getting this down to a number. We utilized some tools out of the toolbox to make this work. So your 23 is back in as of now. You should be operationally whole, but now let's go to what we've been talking
Yep.
about. So let's go to the Excel, please.
Have it in the right spots, that 5 and 5, all right?
So again, as part of this working together that we've talked about and how to do it, currently their starting balance in their outside account is $1 million. They earn about 150 in their fundraising, give or take, right, Lou?
Yeah.
I mean, some years maybe a little less, some whatever, but 150 is pretty standard.
In the last 20 years, it's 1% growth over that period.
Okay, so you're comfortable with that. They're gonna spend 260 or whatever that, I can't read the number right there, 267 this year out of it. They use usually about 70,000 annually, if not more, to cover their internal expenses, as Sarah showed on some of her slides. They have invested their money as well, so at the end of this year, they'll have a balance of about 849. They are, as you can see, it rolls through. The next vehicle comes on board in 2025. They'll still have a large balance at that point. Then they bring on 2 of their vehicles in 2027 and 2028. They bring another vehicle on in the year 2032, which still leaves them enough money to cover on to their next vehicle. So self-sufficient, and as we've been open and discussing this, we're trying to go to work to try to cover their operating costs, and they're going to work together to utilize some of that money to cover their internal costs as they have been. They are well aware they need to help us in some ways as well. We've talked about this. We're going to cover operational. They're going to help us. As you can see down below, we're keeping the 175 in the first vehicle replacement up to line right there. We're keeping that in. Next year we need to fund 135. This year we don't need to fund it because of the ARPA money's going to cover the vehicle, so basically the 175 stays put. Then we can flatline it out for 135 the next few years, get to the next vehicle, and then we up it to the 285 to cover it. I did it in vehicle chunks. I mean, you could flatline it more if you wanted to math it out. And it just seems to work a little bit better. We can plan for it. The same thing for the EMS side of that. We're going to buy a vehicle. We're going to leave the 75,000 in the reserves. Next year we're looking at a 125 to flatline it and go through. So I think what we're going to talk about here is the next thing is can you pull up the slide
Before you get
Go
going,
ahead.
we need to keep in mind that most likely next year after, I'm going to come here and need a 4th ambulance. It's just a matter of time. It's going to happen.
Right.
All right. Whether it's next year, or the year after, it's going to be driven by calls, and it's going to be driven by usage, and it's going to be driven by how many ambulances I
Go
have to
back to
staff.
that one, I'm sorry.
Because when I have one down for maintenance, I start getting chest pains because I'm like, all right, I got 2 ambulances, I got 2 crews. That's not enough. And then something happened, and it has happened. We've lost, bad tire, whatever. So
Blown engine.
we're getting to the point where a 4th ambulance, and we've talked about it last year.
Right.
It's more of a reality now. So we need to be ready for that, and it'll be a $325,000 purchase by the time that happens, and it's not figured out anywhere in there because it's a moving target.
So then, can I task you and you figure out how to do 2/3 your side, 1/3 our side on that vehicle?
On the ambulance,
The
Yeah.
ambulance, you pay for
you
the
guys usually pay the full for the ambulance. Now, what we could do,
I'm saying, you can see where we're at with
Yeah.
this guy. So we're filling you with the 135, the 125. We have center that we gotta give 80 to every year. We're at $400,000
Yeah.
for vehicle reserves.
Yeah.
I'm not asking or saying, but can you look at that $1
Well,
million
what we can do
reserve
is, what
and
we can
figure out
do
maybe
is
a formula that works?
the ambulance, first the ambulance are yours, so when they get back, they go back into that reserve.
Right.
Now, when they're getting sold now, they're getting sold because of ARPA, they're getting sold with a stretcher and a lifting
the
device and all the equipment, so instead of $25,000, we might get $55,000 for it.
Okay.
So that goes back in there, and we could talk about,
I'm just
that-
saying, keep it in your mind,
without
that's
a
all.
doubt.
This
No.
is what we need to talk
Without
about, how
a
to
doubt.
help
We're
each
more
other.
than willing to help. We bought the paramedic vehicles that didn't cost the town anything, and because we believe in it. So if we're and things are crazy for us. Sometimes somebody might leave us $100,000. It happens, and if that happens, you know what? We could say, yep, that's going to
That's
go
all
right in.
we're asking for. is a
Without a
little
doubt.
bit.
I
If
think
you're
we're
in better
hoping
shape
we'll-
than we are at that cash flow point.
Yep.
We're
Right,
very
Lou? I don't
creative.
think we're not.
That's what we're asking for. I
We've
think
been
as a group.
creative. We've
Yeah.
been putting in grants, when they
Okay.
come up, so.
And the other point is too, is if, volume gets up there and we do see that we have to purchase that fourth ambulance, it would also decrease the wear and tear on the existing ambulances a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be able to stretch it out an additional year or so if we need to.
That's all I'm
So-
saying, is we got a lot of things coming.
Without a doubt.
We have to work together.
I just
on
wanted to
this.
throw that one out there because that goes hand in
Right.
hand with the increase in the calls that,
Okay.
and we only had 2 ambulances for years, and then it's just.
Can I ask a
The
question about the
firemen's
ambulance?
Yes.
So is it based on call volume or per capita
Fireman's retirement. No.
of population? How does that work?
How, you mean
And your
the
budget.
ambulance
Keep
calls?
from your-
Or the
Like,
replacement?
Or,
What's gonna drive us to
What
get another
drives
one?
it? Third one?
Exactly.
It's called
Call
volume.
volume.
It's gonna be call
yeah, the
volume.
volume and mileage.
Yeah.
Once they get above 100,000 miles, get higher than 10 years old and above 100,000 miles, their value decreases immensely, but the ability to maintain them actually costs significantly more.
Last
because
year
they're
when we
that
waited for the
far
ambulance to come, we
past
dumped like
their usable
$26,000 in
lifespan.
the ambulance. We shouldn't have. It was terrible.
So like in the police department, it's one officer for every 500 people in town. Do you all have those types of legal
No,
requirements?
no.
Just call volume.
Call volume.
Yeah.
But I believe that
And that's a
OEM
decision we would make together. Like, we'd come in here and say, look, guys, we feel we're heading there. What do you want to do? When do you think? What do you feel comfortable with?
And
and then-
you put 50,000 in the budget for the
For study
study to be
anyway.
done, which would take this,
yes,
that would be part of
right.
the
Our brother's $50,000.
metrics that go into that thing.
Yeah.
It is. She's nodding her head. I saw it.
OEMS too, I know at one point was deadlining ambulances at a certain age. I don't know if they're still doing that, but I remember a few years ago that that would be Wayne's.
They've made some regulatory changes to where you have to upgrade certain items in the ambulances so that it would force companies to purchase.
And I can't rent
services
one
to purchase.
because they're all licensed and inspected. So I just can't. We had an accident with one, and we got hit in the center of town, and it had to go back to the factory. And we were without one for probably 3 weeks before we got a rental. We got it inspected. We got a license. We got to put it in our name. We got to buy it because it has to be in our name. It's a whole thing, and so it's just there's a process to it.
Is there ever been consideration of like sharing one with the rest of the COG?
Can't.
Again, it's gotta be licensed
Okay.
by
Yeah,
Brookfield.
operated by. It's got to say our name on it. It's so many big letters. It's
So, we had talked about this too. This is the fireman's retirement, the LoSAP. That we fund OPEB on the town side. This is now a liability that we need to fund. We have to figure out how to fund this. And we had talked about this briefly, about how can you help us fund it? You maybe said the sale of the vehicle coming up?
I thought we could bring it to the fire company. One of the things, you're looking for $100,000, right?
Yeah.
I think Lou and I talked, we might be able to bring that to the fire company and say, look, you guys are helping us out, you're giving us fire truck, you gave us a lot of ARPA money. If we got everything we asked for, which I understand we did, I think the fire company would be more than willing. I think I know them well enough that we could talk to them, correct?
Is this the 100,000, is that seed money? Or is that annual you talking about?
That's a seed
start.
money to
That's
get
just
to
to
start.
start,
That's just
kickstart
to
it,
kick
and
it.
then we'll talk about it as if you have a
See.
good year and you make a lot of annual sales and revenue, we talk about it. It's a gentleman's talk, but we only want it 1 year right now.
And ladies.
Yes.
You know, I think if you're looking for a one-time thing to start, I think the fire truck is probably the best way to do it, and I'm gonna tell you why. Number one, you're helping us buy us more, all right? All that money would just go back into our account. That's what we do. We just recycle it. Goes into our truck reserve fund. This is gonna be the first time we sell one within a 20-year time, which is we're on this cycle, which we're supposed to. So we'll get some decent money. The last one we sold, we got $5,000 for it. And
It's a
it was
pizza truck.
a pizza truck. It was 35 years old. So now with the replacement schedule that we're on, I think that we could bring that back to the fire company. I think it would be something that we could talk about for sure. And
Yeah, I mean, I think it would work.
without a doubt. And I think it's clean because it's a fire. You're helping us get one, and it's ours, but it's the town. I mean, we all live here, so that would help. It's a win-win for everybody, and that way you could take that and put that in. I don't think that we would have a problem with that. You know, say, you know, I think it would be I would have no problem with that.
Yeah, that's the spirit of cooperation that Clint's trying to.
Without a doubt.
All out, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're in this thing with you guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whatever we gotta do to make it work, we were into it.
And we just need to overall keep an eye on our investments such that they are at a base amount that allows for growth, that allows us to pay for those additional things without having that thing draw down and then.
Yeah.
Nobody's
In-
trying to
in-
strangle the fund. It's
Yeah,
just
in
that-
10 years, we're out of money.
But I think the
And then-
truck is the way to go going
Yeah.
forward. And quite frankly,
Yeah.
if down the road it needed to happen again, there's another
Yeah.
possibility to do some things, you know. As long as everybody understands that, I mean, because that helps everybody, and it's,
We all live here, we all pay taxes.
yeah, I mean,
So we
it's,
get it.
we would have to talk to the guys, but I'm pretty confident they would understand the spirit of cooperation. I mean, like, I made a point after our conversation, the last monthly meeting, I actually put all of our ARPA requests up on the board, including everything you funded on the capital plan through there. It equals to about $1.5 million. If we got everything we asked for, the fire truck, the ambulance, the stuff that we did, and we did. So I'm not unaware of the generosity and that the money went for true COVID relief, because, you know, EMS, fire, very important. So, that being said, our membership now understands very clearly what you guys committed for us. So, next month, if I have to go back and say, hey, look guys, when Engine 5 gets sold, we're gonna give that and we're gonna put that towards the retirement fund, I don't anticipate too much of a pushback from it. So,
Tara, your thoughts?
I like the idea of that.
Trying to work together here and figure this out,
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah. And the ARPA is an anomaly, right? So
Correct.
this, I know you're not looking to give horse in the mouth or anything like
Mm-mm.
that. It's just that this is a rare occurrence, and we're not going to have this.
and we're one of the few, we are one of the few communities, in my opinion, we're one of the few communities that are properly using this money. I think we did a really good job with the committee. I think you guys vetted it. I think I've seen what's going on in some neighboring towns, and it sickens me what's going on. I feel very good. So, not only that, I'm here asking you for $6 million for radios for police, fire, everybody else. So, our membership is well aware of what you guys have committed for us. So I don't anticipate that being a problem.
right. And Tara, that's part of their investments, like Lou was saying. They do invest and they do cover some of the extra costs. They are getting a lot of ARPA money, but they do manage their money and
Right,
help out
and,
where
you know,
they
the
can.
1/3 we play for fire apparatus. I
Right,
mean,
yes.
that comes from there. I mean,
Correct.
150,000 comes in a year, and it's not
Right.
a ton of money.
Right,
You
but
know.
I think that's what we're saying, though.
Sure,
The
we
ARPA
can- we
money,
can-
you are creative, as Sarah says. You
Yeah.
look
Yep.
for grants and.
Everything
So-
we
Very
can.
creative.
Yeah.
And I think we had a really good meeting with Tara and Marcia a couple of weeks ago, that they really kind of, I think, understand that we do supplement, that you give us a budget, but we supplement that operationally. We supplement about $70,000 this year of operational costs, which kind of help things out, you know, which doesn't show up here. So, with spirit of cooperation for sure, whatever you guys think,
Which we want to establish for at least the next 4 years with this board and first
Yes,
selectmen.
yes.
work as gentlemen and ladies.
Yes.
And sit down and work. There might be a year you might have to help us a little bit in the near year.
And we understand that,
It
because
is what
we
it
went
is.
from paying full price to these fire trucks to paying a third. So if there's a year where we have to help something out, we can talk about it, for
Yeah,
sure. I
That's
mean,
all.
it's-
We don't, that's enough
Yeah.
said, as far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned. Dan, you wanna close them out?
I don't.
Ryan, close them out?
No, I mean, me and Mary spent some time with you guys. Very, very impressed with your operation over there. I mean, being new board members, it was a great experience, and thanks for all you guys do. Really.
Well, thanks for your help. We couldn't do it without you guys. And this year especially, we're feeling the love. And it's really cool.
Eileen?
Yeah, I missed out on the Board of Finance one, but I made it to the Boy Scouts one, so I got a pretty good tour that way as well, so that was nice. No, I think it's working well. The only question I had actually was with the billing revenues, what this year's actuals are to comparable.
Do you have those?
Because last year was budgeted at 690. So was the estimate, the increase, was that as a risk or is that as a, we've already been higher this year?
I don't think we're higher. I think we're on track for or close to. I don't know if I
And the
have
funny
it
thing with
right.
billing, for us, it's a moving target. Like this car accident just happened, if that was a 2-car accident, chances of us getting paid for that thing, probably about 3 years. By the time they figure it out, who's at fault, whatever else. So we're getting paid for things from 3 years ago. And sometimes, and if you have a heart attack, we might get paid in 60 days. So it's so dynamic and fluid that we just do our best to, it's a moving target.
And if there's litigation or anything with that.
And I will say proudly, I've never had to come back here and say, we're out of money.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys are, as you said, you're covering the gaps when you need to. I was just wondering where that was targeting and.
EMS.
1 second and I can let you know
I gotcha.
exactly where we are right now.
Sarah, she has it, I think, right here.
EMS budgeting revenue, this is as of like the February 21st,
Yep.
was 492, and fire was 9,124.
We should have.
That was as of what?
February 21st.
And like I said, our call volume, as you can see, is going through the roof. So now they're not all transports, but a lot of people there is an inordinate amount of people that refuse to go to the hospital. They want to get treated, help, lifted up, and then leave. And Wayne had a good figure. How much does it cost for an ALS call?
At the very minimum, because we average about 90 minutes for an advanced life support call, costs $131.15. That includes what it costs us to have a paramedic and an EMT for that hour and a half, and all of the basic, just the routine advanced life support costs. I mean, even down to how much it costs per 10-pack of electrodes that we use. Let's see.
Eileen, more update, 500,000, almost just shy of 500,000 and a little bit more than 10 for the fire side. So we've had a couple more deposits.
Yeah, but the alcohol prep costs about 5 cents a piece. So really, I broke it down really, based on our most current costs, so that if we have somebody who's having just the basic medical complaint but requires a paramedic, this is what it's at minimum going to cost. And for basic level ambulance is $108, because that's still that 90-minute turnaround from time of call to the time of getting back to town. And that would just be just the paramedic and the EMT just transporting with no extra oxygen or disposables.
And now that you're all in the room,
Consumables.
and you're a part of this, we, a couple years ago, with Marcia and Steve, we sat down, we needed to change how we kind of operated because of the calls and the way the system was working. You gave us some really good guidance. Lou was in the room with us. You gave us some good guidance, and you helped us build this system that we have. It cost a lot of money, all right? But the end result is one of the best EMS systems in the state. That is right here, and that serves our community, our visitors. You should be very proud of it. I am. I get phone calls all the time. How do you guys do it? I said, well, you all have to get along. And I don't just mean us. The First Selectman, the Board of Finance, everybody does. And I know we're all committed to help the community. And what you guys enabled us to do with increasing our wages, we have some of the best providers in Western Connecticut that work here. I have a line out the door that want to come see Chief Woodkey and work for us. Okay, so that keeps our people on their toes. They're performing. They're there early every day, and it's all because of what you guys did. So I want to thank you personally, in the spirit of cooperation. Sometimes you don't see the end result of what you guys do, this hard work you guys do. That ambulance system up there is a direct result of that. So I appreciate that. It makes my job easier, and it makes our town a lot safer across the board.
Brianna, any comments?
No, I actually just wanted to give a huge thank you to you guys for helping my family out on Sunday morning when we had an emergency. You were quick, you were prompt, you were there, you were amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, in the end, you guys are okay, right, with what we discussed
Awesome.
tonight? Everybody's happy? Everybody
Thank
can
you.
go home okay?
100%.
Tara, are you happy?
Two thumbs up.
All right, I think we're all happy, so thank you. Thank you for all you do.
We appreciate your
Thank
support.
Yep, thank you.
One question I have is because price increases are coming and my equipment's starting to fail, when can we look at the ARPA money? Like, what, we talking 6 months, 6 days, 60 days? What do you think?
The ones that are committed to capital will have to go.
Not the capital ones, the list that went to the ARPA committee, the equipment, the list of the items.
So we voted on that today, and as soon as it goes through the Board of Finance and hits a town meeting, which I believe is the process, then
Cool.
we can
March
start.
29th is the
Cool.
town meeting.
Because I'm trying to hold off our increases for the guy, and we're waving a lot of money in front of him, so he's gonna hold it off, but I just got.
March 29th.
Awesome.
That's probably the best we can do. It's gotta go to town meeting.
No, that's fine.
So
I just didn't know if it was gonna be July or September. I didn't know what this
March.
was. No. Awesome. Tremendous.
All
You
right.
guys, that's
All right,
very good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Big random.
Anytime anybody wants to,
I don't know.
pour down there, weekends, evenings, we'll take care of you.
So that's the big meeting.
Relatives, friends,
Something happened.
whatever.
Hey, Dan, can we make a motion to take 5 minutes?
At least keep the EMS people.
It's up to you guys.
All right, I'll make a motion, we take a 5-minute break. Favor, aye. Shut us down, Dan, please.
be back.
All right, well, welcome back, thank you. All right, let's resume back to general budget discussions. So let's review where we are currently right now, as we left it on Thursday. I know we didn't leave it like that on Thursday.
4.03.
No, that wasn't, well, but we had that going down by the 600,000, correct?
We didn't put that in yet.
How can we put that in there so we can see this number?
We would have to put it in as that was a combination of one-time revenue,
Right.
which not sure that we had fleshed out exactly what, but I'd thrown some numbers out there.
Right.
But approximately 400,000 was one-time revenue, and 200,000 was reclassification of expenses.
Yep. So where could you put that in as a plug right now?
So I think, so I could put it in here as 600,000 as a plug. Let me put it in down here as one-time revenue, but it's really a combination of two.
Understood, but for our purposes right now, until we massage it.
I'm gonna put it right here, I'm gonna highlight it in red.
All right, so now we go back to the summary, we're at 3,115.
Ta-da.
No, don't go to that yet. Well, I'll start with Dan. Any thoughts on what you like in there? You take out, increase?
No, I mean, where are we, everything that we did on Thursday, I agree with everything we put in.
Okay, Ryan?
So I just sent the team here the fuel contingency. I think there's an argument to cut that fuel contingency based on my analysis here. So basically, I kind of went through the scenarios of what what percentage the contingency could produce. So basically, scenario one showing if we keep the general contingency with the first selectwoman's cut, it would basically, we'd have a 114.6% increase in year-over-year fuel to go over that. Scenario two would not have a fuel contingency line item, but it would have the contingency with what we talked about, bringing the contingency back to what last year was. And that would support a 129.6% increase.
And just fuel costs?
It's just
Okay.
fuel costs, so it's school side and town side. Heating oil and, fuel oil. And then here down below is showing if we did 50,000 contingency, 100,000 contingency, and how that would grow. I think, just looking at this, it's really hard to kind of say what fuel's going to be in 2 years. We might be down to where we are now, right? The departments did a good job. They've increased their budgets by 47.2%. So I don't think it's really supports. And I was on the fence. I was one pushing for the fuel contingency. I think we can get away with running lean here and not putting an extra. I think we should. My opinion is we should support the additional contingency. So go to last year. We're conservative. You guys were conservative on it because of COVID costs. I just don't think there's an extra fuel contingency.
What we put in there, 50,000?
50,000. So I think we can cut. I would argue to cut that.
So go ahead, Marcia.
So I'm just walking through the numbers here, because I didn't look at it earlier when you sent it, I'm sorry. So this was the cost last year.
Correct.
And we've increased it 47% at 225, okay, I'm following that. And the general contingency.
So that's assuming that the general contingency, if worst case scenario, there's no extra special ed students or et cetera, we don't use it anywhere else in the town, but fuel prices blow out. This is what the worst case scenario you can cover.
You're saying the general contingency fund has enough to hold it? without adding in a secondary line, correct? To simplify it. So in other words, what is our general contingency at right now?
I think it went to 393.
It was 321 based on the cut from Tara, but then we talked about putting that back to last year.
I think we did put it back to 393
Correct,
already.
yeah. So, but I just want to show both scenarios,
Right.
if we decided not to put it back.
So you're saying with that 393 in there, the 50 is a double kill?
Yep, that's exactly, it's like Marcia's point of the revenue being too conservative by doing it twice, that's what my argument is.
Unless two special ed kids move into town.
Yeah, that's true.
That's always a possibility. I get that.
That's fluctuated a lot though. I mean, it's really, it seems like, I mean, over the past year and a half as they've been tracking it in the, you know, in that nice spreadsheet that they have, it seems like maybe we've just been lucky that when one comes in, somebody goes out. So it's balanced itself and they've held pretty steady and covered that. But yeah, it's true though. If that doesn't happen, then yeah. But do we really plan for that 100%?
Do we know? I mean, we also don't know, like Tara's argument last time, it could be, gas could be $10 a gallon. We just don't know.
Right.
It's hard to say we need a reserve for that when we just don't know.
Yeah.
Mary, your initial thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to plan for, you know, what you don't really know, but, you know, Ryan makes a good point. Of course, you know, oil too, you know, it was up to 130 a barrel just like a couple days ago, now it's back around 100.
Yeah,
So it's really like a ping pong ball right now. No one knows.
And yet we're trying to throw the dart years out. It's not like it's you know.
No, it's another difficult budget year that way. I agree. It's not cut and dry by no means. Marcia, your thoughts?
I think it's just a matter of time before we need the contingency for special ed, but I would think that if fuel really skyrockets, if we had a bond call and we said, hey, we had to do an additional appropriation, that we would be with all of our neighbors and that. And we do have the money where we could put it in, even if it's not in the budget. That we try not to do it, but we certainly would have the talking points and everyone would have felt the pain together.
Brianna?
Yeah, no. Actually, this Excel spreadsheet was very helpful, and I agree with everything you guys said. It seems hard to budget for something that is quite all over the place right now.
My thoughts when I left here was we've never done it on both sides before like we did this year. We increased the revenue an extra 150, and we put in this 50,000, and we brought the contingency back up. That's the first time we've done that in a long time. Now I don't know if right, wrong, and different. The number still is low. We've always been conservative on the revenue and eased into the contingencies, and that the expenditure line was a little higher. So I don't know, we were doing it on both ends, are we comfortable on both ends? That's my only takeaway from the other night. If we were to take 100,000 away from sales right now, from the revenue line, well, where would that put us, Marcia? If we drop that, you just drop your number to 600 to 500, right?
And keep the vehicle,
Keep the, I like the idea of the contingency for the fuel costs in a way, because we just track the costs then if it's above what we had.
And it would be easier to use it with a transfer with
Right.
contingency than to pull the revenue down.
That was my thought process.
331, that would drop it 100.
I don't think that's a bad number, really. Even if we dropped to 50, so 50 would put us back. Drop it 50, change it. I know it's semantics, I get it, I apologize. I don't know what else, we gotta go through a few other items, but I think this is getting close to where, Dan, have you gone through anything and seen anything else in this?
I'm actually, waiting to see where.
The Board of Ed does, that's another big change, right? The Board of Ed, depending on what they do, is gonna help us here hopefully a little.
They were, as
Tomorrow
of,
night?
yeah, tomorrow night, but as of today, they were hoping to find 50. but they-
50 is the magic number this year.
They were looking at some refinements that had come in. They were comparing that they had to have some of these numbers in the budget, but were comparing them to prior years, and they hadn't spent them in prior years, so he was still working on it as of this afternoon.
Back to where we were.
We're back to where we were. If they could, I mean, we're moving 50 all over the place. But
Yeah, but I'm okay
No,
with it.
I am
mean,
too, yeah. If they could meet us at 250, I would be ecstatic.
And I think everybody got what they needed to operate. I don't know how you feel, Tara, but I think going through the process, I think not every department pretty much got what they needed to operate. Is there something you need to add?
I would like to go back through those exercise items, just to take another hard look
Okay.
at what we threw in there as part of the exercise. There's a couple things I have on my mind.
Go ahead, speak them.
Can we go through the green ones? I don't know if you still have them highlighted.
On the operating or on the capital?
Operating. Who do you guys have tomorrow night?
I don't think any, land use and,
Highway department didn't want to come, I don't think.
Right, he's
Ralph
talked
said,
to
not
me
didn't
today.
want to come, he asked if he didn't have to
Land use,
come.
Parks and Rec, and I think there's a
And
third.
land use, parks and rec and highway.
Then we're gonna run through the slides of the other departments quick tomorrow night as well. People put
Okay.
forth the slides and did the time and the effort. We're gonna run through each department.
Yeah, I can wait just until tomorrow. once
Well,
we-
no, I mean, if you got a concern, put it out there so we can think about it. You obviously gave some thought to something, so what's your concern?
Yeah, so through the weekend, the salary situation and aside from the police where that's a rank and file issue that Steve and I both agreed. And I just want to reiterate the fact that this wasn't something I came up with on my own when we presented it to you. This was by the Board of Selectmen. So yes, I was a major part of that, but it was the three of us. So going back to the idea of the salary study, I think that it might be time for that. I know it's something that the town has been looking at for a long time. The union situation would be something completely independent of that. If the $20,000 is there, I would be for it if we could keep money aside for any potential increases. Now, where that money is going to come from, I have no idea, but
I agree.
if we're talking about building empires and having, certain things in place for the years to come, then I think it's going to be important to really scrutinize every single position across the board to make it fair and equitable.
Now, I guess my question would be, again, I'm not in government, so I don't understand the rules and regulations, but wouldn't that be an HR discussion and not shared with the employees? So would we have to do increases right now? Like, couldn't that go into the next budget year, right?
Or the next contract
Or the next
review,
contract,
yeah.
because I think that the key to the study is to say, are we paying people proper amount, or are we overpaying them or underpaying them? And you can always if we're underpaying them, we address that at the next budget cycle, not mid-year.
I did talk to an employee that was in New Milford the last time they did one, not this time, but the last time they did a salary study. And they didn't change wages right away.
Right, I would think it would go in the next budget cycle, and I don't think it would be shared with the employee, it would be the HR director, right? I mean, I assume that.
It's a public document.
Yeah, see, that's.
It's a meeting of
You know, I think of,
It's okay for it to be a public document, because if we're gonna have to stand up to it, it's gotta be a public document anyway, right? I mean, the bottom line is, if it shows we're grossly underpaid, it's something we gotta deal with. And if it shows the other way, but I think, get the survey done, and we don't set aside money this year, but we promise the employees we're gonna have a plan. And you come up with a plan. That gives you 6 months, we're gonna be budget season before you know it. I mean, by the time this money's available, which is July 1, by the time you get a survey done, and you actually understand the survey, we're back into December already. So you're back into the next budget season. And I think part of this process and what Marcia and I and this group has been talking about is, let's get policies in place, right, Marcia? And I think your word is internal equities as well. Let's figure out a way to get internal equities and figure it out. I think if we went forth with the salary survey, and again, everybody's gonna have us speak here, so I think we're standing behind trying to make it right. I mean, it's part of the salary survey. And Dana, I'll ask your opinion.
We actually have a lot going on as well. You know, if we're considering a transition to a health department, as an example, you know, it's gonna free up some certain areas. I'm not entirely sure of the cost benefit analysis there yet, but if we don't go down that road, then we're gonna have to bring on an MPH, and those people come at a premium. So, you know, what is that salary for when Doc leaves? Like, is it going to be full-time? Is it gonna be part-time? You know, there's a lot of factors to consider across the board when it comes to salaries. And since I've only been here for a very short time, and I haven't had a chance to really get to know everybody, while I do appreciate and understand that the department heads and the directors do know their personnel, they do know what they need, and I trust that entirely, I'm very uncomfortable with doing any kind of salary increase aside from the one that was recommended for the police at this juncture, without the salary study.
So, how many studies are we contemplating? There's a lot of studies. We've got the salary study, we got the emergency services study, we have a center school study.
Facilities study.
Facilities study.
And communication radio.
No, that's it.
That's it.
That was in there. You already put that in.
Yeah.
One we're stuck on, the police radios. I don't
Yeah.
think we can get around that.
Yep.
So that's a
That's 39,000?
39. I think that's
So the
a,
emergency services are for the, so, and then center school's 30, so we already approved that last year, is that?
that's a last year. That's a
Yeah.
rollover. So
But still,
you can't really combine it.
Right, but still, it's just,
So go ahead. what-
consultants, consultants
I don't
and
like that.
studies and,
You have the building condition study for BHS and WMIS?
yep,
That's coming out of ARPA though.
Right.
yeah, but still.
But what else you gonna do? I mean, put a solution on the table.
I don't have a solution.
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact we've had a history of kicking things down the road, and it's catching up to us, and we kind of have to know what to prioritize next, because we've got some pretty big ticket items that we keep hearing about on all these, you know, as we're going through the budget. So, I mean, having an outside opinion come in, I think, and look at this and tell us this is really where you need to invest your money when money's limited, right?
So there's three things that can happen, right? Like, we spend the 20,000 for them to tell us we're exactly where we need to be, or we're off by several $100,000.
There's a plan.
And we might just be off in some departments and just on target on
And
others.
that's the other
Yeah.
option.
So I've been obviously.
Or we're
gone.
paying too
Yeah,
much.
I know you're
Yeah,
right.
exactly. So you turned me around last week with your comments.
About no salary.
Exactly.
I told you I had a really hard weekend.
Glad I'm not on board with salary.
So and part of it was the union concerns. So what time have
Well,
you?
that we're not gonna be able to address anyway unless we open up some folders, and
Yep.
that would, I mean, they are locked in for 4 more years after last summer, and those decisions were already made as far as I understand. So in order to change anything that's contractual by the union would be near to impossible
Okay.
without waiting out the next 4 years.
So if anything, this is a starting point for the next contract.
Right, exactly.
Negotiations in
That's-
4 years.
Right.
My problem lies, Dan, is when you talk salary thing, I've looked at all of them, you know I've looked
Yeah.
at all of them, but you don't get the full hours worked. You gotta take this to another level. The 35 versus 37, the 40, the defined benefit plan that we have is also a value add that maybe other towns don't have. And I think if we
24 sick
did
days
it,
a year.
hmm?
24 sick days a year.
Right. I think these are the things too that we don't even know what we have versus other towns. So it's
Yeah.
really, it's a one-off, figure it out. I hear exactly what you're saying.
I've been doing this for 4 years, and I've yet to have somebody present me with a study that I was like, wow, that was well spent.
No,
I have not found value in one study that's been done. The Tecton study, the enrollment study was crazy. We've had financial consultants come in back when we were doing the library saying this is a great idea, which was So I just worry that studies show what you're trying to get them to show. And the studies show what the sponsor wants the study to say. And
now we're doing a library study.
Right.
To tell us we need a new library.
right, exactly. So I'm just concerned about spending from different pockets, but spending upwards of $250,000 on studies that who knows if they're gonna really provide value.
So, go ahead, Ryan.
No, I think that's a great point. mean,
I don't know how to get around it.
But if,
because-
but if you tip it on its head, you almost gotta hire someone to gather all this data and have the capabilities of crunching the numbers.
Mhm.
So again, the radio survey, do we have, anyone have the
No,
technology
that's
to pull
needed.
that up? Because
That's
I was
needed.
against it too,
Yep.
and then I started to look at it and hearing the fire chiefs talk and the police chief talk is like, takes a level of above normal knowledge. The salary survey, if it comes from anyone other than an outside neutral, is gonna be worthless. If we put it together, and we like you said, well, the Board of Finance put it together, of course they found the towns that work, and on the other side, it's the reverse. So the validity of a third party, and I think that's a finite study, we should be able to track those numbers back. Center school, I know from people that school is in bad shape,
Yep.
and I know from some people parts of it is good, but do we really know what it is to where to go to?
Yep.
I mean, how do you?
No, I'm just telling you that where my discomfort lies, but when you break it down.
And we
You're
had
right.
an EMS study in there because we are trying to work with Andy and his group, but we want to know where that line is. We want to know what other towns are doing per call basis because we're facing something coming up. So this part of this is another outside study of calls versus staffing to the point of we're gathering data from other towns and hard data. So I think this is more defined, I would hope, than what we've done in the past. And it has the ability to be more defined. I mean, one of the Tecton studies was how many people are moving to this area over the next 10 years.
Right.
So,
Nobody predicted the pandemic.
you're right.
Right.
I don't know. I never liked consultants.
Yep.
Okay, but I have seen the value in these projects. I could see it.
Okay.
And I'd also like to say that it's going to be very hard to justify who gets what, when, I mean, look, we've got amazing people who keep this town afloat. I mean, we really do have an incredible team here, and I walked into, a well-oiled machine. But in order to, compensate people for the work that they do and the skills that they have and the abilities they bring to the table, and to retain them and for them to want to come to work every day and spend $5 a gallon on gas to get here, how do I determine at this juncture, where we are with who gets what?
Okay.
Aside from what department heads are telling me, which I do trust and believe, but it becomes a very, very difficult situation.
Salaries have always been that way. And in prior years, Dan, as you know, the number would put 5,000 or 10,000 on a salary. There was no rhyme or reason.
Mhm.
There wasn't like 4.3% gets them up to the norm, 6.7% gets them to average. It was, they're underpaid $5,000.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Then we saw two last year, $10,000 almost. And I think that, again, to Tara's point is, how do you even know what to compensate if we don't have a baseline to go off of?
Okay.
And then Marcia uses the word internal equity. How do we understand all the departments, other towns, and what they do? I think there's value.
Okay.
I really do think there's value. I think it could bite that we are underpaid, and I don't think we are. I mean, from what I've looked, but I might be missing something. If we are, we are. We have to.
Well,
Figure it
I'm
out.
also not willing to be on board with it unless we have a plan to go after our inefficiencies. So if we don't have a way to cover down, what is it that we are doing? Why would we, so let's say we're, I don't know, $500,000 short. Are we going to be able to make up that difference if the study comes back and says our people are underpaid in these areas?
I don't see us being 500,000 short. No,
Just
I know that.
how
I'm just
much it
saying.
is.
I don't think this number is as big as we think. I think if we're off $5,000 in 10 areas, I think we're off a lot. From the basic numbers that I've reviewed, I think it's. I wouldn't bet on it, but I bet it's no more than 100,000. Marjorie, what do you think at first glance of the numbers?
Just when I compared to our neighbors, when we were doing some comparison to Ridgefield, which I didn't think was comparable, Ridgefield, we would have to increase our salaries, just one per one, so administrative assistant, it only had one in there, about 635,000, which just shows that we're not comparable to Ridgefield. But when we compare to Bethel, New Milford, Southington, and Newtown, the bottom line, when you add them all up, and again, all are a little bit different here and there, and it's not a salary study, but we are 5% over 3 of those. And the one that was over us was Newtown, who works more hours.
Right. That's where I'm comfortable. Ridgefield, we're never going to match. We're not going to match Ridgefield. You're not going to match Canaan. You're not going to match. So I'm saying our adjoining towns that people are going to drive to come to to Brookfield to work are the Monroes, the Southburys, the Newtowns, the New Milfords, the Bethels, and I think you'll find we're close.
You could even do it in 2 parts. I mean, the internal equity that the stuff that I gave Tara and Fern, it has think of a spreadsheet. There's 5 layers of categories, department head to administrative assistant, and they've already given us the categories. And then you go across the top, and these are other aspects of that job. Like, you're a technical person and you get called out at the middle of the night might be more valuable than someone that doesn't. But even if we took that, we look at our administrative assistants, they're paid 2 different ways. There's a gap at 25% between the highest and lowest, and the highest paid gets hour per hour and the lowest paid is salary non-exempt. We could do that internally and say, this doesn't make sense. So maybe year 1, we do that. Year 2, we do the external equity.
So I agree with this. So this is my last comment, then I'll shut up. So I agree that the internal equity is something that we can do ourselves and should do ourselves. In terms of benchmarking ourselves, you just said we're not going to compete with Ridgefield or New Canaan, and the best study for the market is what the market is, how the market performs. Are we having an outflow of people to towns that we think we're competing with? Or are we having an inflow of people trying to work here from those towns? I think the answer to that is no. We lose people to Ridgefield. We just said we're not going to compete with Ridgefield.
No.
We lose people to the coast. We just said we're not going to compete with the coast.
Right.
Do we lose people to Bethel, to New Fairfield, to blah, blah, blah? I don't think we do. The best judge of the market is the market. But that's just my point.
And do we need to do a salary study for every person that's non-union, right? Do we need to, if you have a department head that comes to you and says, I want to give this person a $10,000 raise, I think that's the time to do the study. I mean, that's what we do at work. Like, if somebody's getting an increase or we're trying to hire someone, that's when we do the salary study.
Well, that's why I'm trying to see if we should do it now, because we're in a situation where some increases are being requested.
Right.
That's
that
the
makes
pressure. Okay.
And again, I would think internally we could do some of it, right? I mean, it's all public. When you're doing a private company, salaries aren't public, so you need a third party to kind of help you. But when you're doing something here, I think it's pretty simple to go to Bethel, New Fairfield, neighboring towns, and just kind of do something. And I would think that HR can do that, and they can just give you an idea, like, is this warranted?
I've been looking at it for 3 months, and CCM provides this information. I'm not that expert that we just talked about.
Right.
It's the benefits, it's everything.
Yeah,
It's so much. It can't, I did it too. It can't
Okay.
be done. It needs to be.
Not to mention the fact that there's a shortage in these municipal skills across the state. So if we do lose, God forbid, Marcia or the assessor, or like right now we're missing a sanitarian. Like we're going to be very, very hard pressed to find that person. With Alice's departure, we got very lucky to have gotten Rochelle on board.
Okay.
I think also it may lead into a policy of pay raises that aren't 2.5 across the board. If we understand that now you can move into more of a merit-based pay increase and get away from everybody just getting swiped with a 2.5, I think that this is a stepping stone to the next level of a true pay raise policy. Because right now the pay raise policy is it's 2.5, put the number in, or 2.25, put the number in. Everybody gets the same pay raise.
And there's no motivation to excel or to,
Right.
to help your neighbor out if you have some downtime. It's just a lot of factors in there, and, you know, I've been thinking a lot too about potential like cash bonuses for performance, but we have to get to a point where we've got processes in place, you know, across the board to do reviews on performance and those types of things, which I think is a challenge to get at.
Think about it.
It's just something I've been
It's
thinking
something
a lot
Just one
about.
person, but it's okay.
No, we're all in this together.
It's a good discussion though.
Yeah.
It's always been, for me, it's always been a problematic
Yeah.
discussion. Again, Steve came to us last year with 5 pay raises of 5,000 or more, and we turned them down, right? The Board of Selectmen voted them down before it came to us. I don't think we were gonna agree to them either at that point. It's just too large of an increase we saw. But we don't know what we're really judging against. I mean, I get the market, I understand, I always said that too, who's
Yeah.
leaving us? I mean, obviously, some people are gonna leave Ridgefield and get a, one we lost some to Weston, I believe, as well.
Parks Rec went to Ridgefield.
Yeah, Parks and Rec with their, and
Yep.
the town clerk's office, I think, went to Weston too, one of the members there went to Weston. We'll
Okay.
talk about it later,
Okay.
that one. Anything else?
Sorry.
No, that's all right,
It's okay,
that's
no,
why
it's
we're
fine.
talking, that's, what else was on your,
Two more nights.
what else was on your,
That was
okay.
all I had.
All right, it's getting late now. One thing I want to talk about CLA, we didn't bring that up, and that was a problem last year. What are we doing with the CLA? I didn't even look at that line item.
They, is in here for exactly what they asked for. That if you wanted to do something else, as we learned last year, you would have to.
Called 3 other towns.
you
All
talk-
the other
yeah.
towns already went back and were on board with it. I have not sent that email yet.
So we're on board with their ask.
It went up 3%. Last year was the big increase because they added money to start capital replacement policy.
So that money, they went from 85 to 125, and now they're at 129. So we're agreeing to all their capital. I thought they even got capital 100,000 from their owners for their boat too. So what capital are we agreeing to in that 129? Are they buying 3 more boats, 2 more boats, 5 more boats?
I think they were doing a replacement, I think they were doing a replacement policy, and we have that in this here.
I think they established a new crew as well.
So here's the 100,000 that you talked about.
Yeah.
So they were putting money in every year, which they hadn't been putting money in every year before. So here you can see the big jump that happened last year where they were putting in 200 and then they've got 100 a year. It's very similar to your schedule that you showed us earlier of what they were anticipating funding and then what they were anticipating using the capital for. Just 38,000 this year, and that comes from 10,000 for the headquarter building, the arc with a hoist, don't know what the arc is, and a buoy.
Right. And the other town said they're gonna go along with it? So that we don't have a choice anyway. We ride. Okay.
How about Little Noah? That was a pretty substantial.
Well, they saw that what Candlewood did last year, and they said, oh, we should have that, they can't say no. And so that was the big increase there, let me just find it.
71, 91.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because we have a lot of access, I mean, a lot of properties, but not much
Right.
public access.
Right.
So that was one of the big ones, is they're starting a reserve.
So what are the towns? Newtown, Bridgewater, and Brookfield? Is that three?
Roxbury,
These-
Southbury.
Right there they are.
New
Oh,
Milford.
there we go.
Yeah, we found all the public boat launches for kayak and doing it.
Yep.
Anything else before we go to public comment then? One night.
Just, are we gonna have by Wednesday what the motion is supposed to look like, particularly on this capital side? So that we know what we're moving, how it's gonna be presented, with all the alternative funding sources.
Yeah, we may need Dennis's help on that, but.
Okay.
So we need that by Wednesday, hopefully, right?
I'd like it by Wednesday. I'd like to finish Wednesday. I
Yeah.
don't think we have much more to talk about. I mean, like we've talked about in the public in here, you can only take so much out of those smaller accounts, right? I mean, though we're in first selectman and throw them, right? It's a matter of where the big numbers fall. And I think we've left some of the big numbers out. We put some of the big numbers back in from our experience that we know needed to go back and to figure out a way. Marcia's, you know, new rule, not new rule, but understanding of the rule that helped us get there.
If we left the 6 million to be bonded out of the capital, how does that affect it? Or doesn't it?
It's a bonded,
Wouldn't
it
affect
doesn't
us.
affect cash capital, it would affect it if we did cash. The only other thing that you could talk about in this budget is the paving program, you moved it all to cash capital. And we've been doing it $100,000 steps. I think we took, what, a 180 step this year?
So it would have been 150 bonded, but then the budget was cut by 75,000. So then that left 75 bonded, and so that's when it all moved to cash.
So I mean, do we leave it all cash now and,
Yes.
and be done with it? And that's how it goes each year from now on?
And do we take it out of the capital budget and put it in the operating budget?
It almost has to,
Yeah.
because now it's an operating.
The only difference would be the timing, that you would have to spend it by June 30th or lose it. So although it sounded like a good idea when it came out my mouth the first time, that he does cross fiscal years because June 30th is right in the middle of the paving season, so probably we would take it in cash. We should take it in cash.
All right, any public comment? Hearing none, I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.